The Energy Subcommittee will come to order for the Energy Subcommittee Markup. I want to thank you all for being here today. I'm excited to chair our first Energy Subcommittee Markup, take up a set of bills to increase American energy production and restore energy leadership. I'll recognize myself for our opening statement. The United States became the global leader in energy production and energy-related greenhouse gas emission reductions. This success was a result of federal policies that encourage innovation and investment in the energy industry, policies that unleashed American energy. Unfortunately, the rush to green agenda and misguided government policies of the last couple of years have taken an aggressive top-down regulatory approach that has decreased domestic energy production, reduced energy supplies, and increased the cost for consumers. Energy is the foundation of everything in American life. High energy prices hurt low-income and middle-class Americans the most. According to the EIA, one-third of American households struggle to pay their energy bills. We went from being energy dominant on the world stage to a self-inflicted energy crisis. We're facing energy scarcity, record high gas prices, and less reliable grid. Republicans have solutions to make us yet again energy dominant, and I'm grateful that we have an opportunity today to take up our first set of bills seeking to achieve this goal. I also want to note that these bills went entirely through regular order. We had a full committee hearing in January to inform us on the state of American energy, as well as a field hearing in Midland, Texas. The subcommittee also held a legislative hearing the first week of February to hear expert testimony on how to better the bills, and we're now holding the subcommittee markup. All the bills today seek to unleash American energy, make energy more affordable for all Americans, and secure energy supply chains. My bill, H.R. 1121, protects American energy production by prohibiting the president from declaring a moratorium on fracking. It also reaffirms the states have primacy over production on state and private lands. This is necessary because President Biden has repeatedly stated that he would end fossil fuel production in the United States. To address energy infrastructure permitting, we have Mr. Armstrong's bill, H.R. 1058, promoting Cross-Border Energy Infrastructure Act, which encourages the construction of energy infrastructure across the borders of the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, helping us secure Western Hemispheric energy security. There's also Dr. Burgess's legislation aimed at streamlining the natural gas pipeline permitting process at FERC. Increasing pipeline capacity in the United States is key to our energy security. Several bills also address the importance of American energy exports in the global market. The world is safer when America is energy dominant, and Representative Johnson's bill to unlock our domestic LNG would make it easier for FERC to approve export terminals to deliver clean energy to our allies. We also will be taking up a resolution from Representative Guthrie that expresses support for free trade and the export of crude oil and petroleum products. This is necessary because President Biden and Democrats on this committee have advocated for reinstating the crude oil export ban. Lifting the export ban in 2015 has lowered prices while also increasing our leverage globally. It would be short-sighted to reverse this. Dr. Bucshon's bill, H.R. 1068, Securing America's Critical Minerals Supply Act, requires the Secretary of Energy to assess our critical energy resource supply chain to ensure we have a secure and available supply. Mr. Latta's bill, H.R. 1085, the Refiner Act, requires the National Petroleum Council to submit a report on our refining capacity. It is essential we address not only expanded production, but also refining capacity to meet the growing demand. We all know President Biden revoked the permit for Keystone XL pipeline permit on his first day in office. This began his war on American energy. Mrs. Lesko has a resolution expressing disapproval of President Biden's revocation of the permit. In addition to these bills, I'm hopeful we can continue to work across the aisle to secure our nuclear supply chain and strengthen our grid, including the bipartisan cybersecurity bill from Representatives Wahlberg and Schreier. Our goal is to enact policy that delivers affordable, reliable, and clean energy to all Americans, a goal I believe that we all share on this committee regardless of our party. These bills are a step to increase supply and infrastructure, reducing prices so Americans aren't forced to decide between putting food on the table or keeping the lights on. They also get us back to being a global energy leader, so we no longer have to beg our adversaries for energy. It's time to increase American energy production, restore American energy leadership, flip the switch on American energy. I urge all my colleagues to support the bills in front of us today so that we can achieve this goal, and I'll now recognize the Ranking Member Dingell for opening statement.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and I guess I can commend you for going through regular order in the sense that you had a hearing and now a markup on these bills, but there are 30 people on this panel on both sides of the aisle, and I've spent time working on legislation with most of them. I think we have a real opportunity to come together in this Congress in a meaningful way to advance bipartisan energy policies that'll help move our committee forward, or our country forward, because everybody I've talked to on this committee, Democrats and Republicans, want to ensure that all Americans have access to affordable and reliable energy. Everybody I've spoken to agrees we need to do more to improve the security and functionality of our nation's energy grid so they can handle the capacity needs of the 21st century. And all of us want to see America as truly energy independent from the rest of the world. So I think it's a real opportunity lost, Mr. Chairman, even though we went through regular order, that the bills we're going to be considering today won't solve any of these issues and are in fact Republican messaging bills, because they don't do anything to break our nation's addiction to oil. They don't do anything to lower the cost of energy for hard-working Americans or to make it more reliable. They don't do anything to increase our nation's energy security. They don't do anything to make our nation more energy independent, and they don't strengthen the grids. So there we go. What the bills do is they make us more reliant on oil and gas. They make us more reliant on the global natural gas market and the potentially devastating price fluctuations that we've already seen that come with it. They double down on oil and gas production at a time where every country in the world is investing in clean energy production. They bolster an industry that's already performing at one of its highest levels in history and reporting record high profits as a result. In fact, two of the measures before us today would allow big oil to increase exports of fossil fuels from this country, which, as we learned last year, does nothing to bring down energy prices for hardworking Americans, but instead is a huge gift to help pad the already sky-high profits of the oil and gas industry. Another bill before us, H.R. 1115, would fast-track the construction of new natural gas pipelines by limiting the government's ability to look at the environmental harms they might cause. Another is a backdoor attempt to resurrect the Keystone pipeline, which was abandoned almost 2 years ago. And so if we really want to bring down the cost of energy at home, and I think we all do, if we really want to pursue an energy policy that would provide Americans the affordable and reliable energy they need, and if we really want to make our country more energy independent, then we need to break our reliance on fossil fuels and make the transition to clean energy, all types of clean energy, as soon as possible. Other countries are already doing it. Our allies around the world who understand the potential that clean energy brings to both the economies and their way of life are moving now to make the transition as quickly as possible. And frankly, I don't know why we wouldn't want to do the same. Why not? It economically benefits the industry. America's been a global leader on so many issues for so many years, and it's time for us to be a global leader on this issue as well. We don't need to expand oil and gas production in our quest for energy independence anymore. And by expediting the transition to clean energy, we can break our reliance on the global market. By expanding the use and deployment of clean energy technologies across the country, we can grow our economy while protecting the air we breathe and the water we drink. So I would suggest, instead of ramming through the bills before us today, I would urge this subcommittee to work together to come up with real bipartisan solutions to the issues we face. So after we finish doing this little messaging day today, let's sit down, let's work together, and let's really come up with some bipartisan solutions, because I think our economy and our constituents and our energy future demand it. I yield back.
Generally yields back. Chair will now recognize the chairwoman of the full committee, Ms. McMarsh-Rogers, for 5 minutes. Opening statement.
This morning, the subcommittee will take up 9 bills to continue our work to unleash American energy, lower energy costs, and strengthen supply chains. These are the key elements for ensuring reliable, secure, and affordable delivery of energy to all Americans, to their homes, to their businesses, the grocery stores, and everywhere in between. From gas to hydro to nuclear, these energy and climate solutions will help ensure we are good stewards of the environment, that we unlock a new era of American technological leadership and innovation, remove regulatory barriers, and put energy security back in the center of energy policy. For example, Dr. Bouchon's bill will require the Department of Energy to identify the critical energy resources that are vulnerable to supply disruptions. This would provide essential information to make decisions concerning threats to our supply chains. And those threats are present and growing. China has been termed the OPEC of green energy materials. Yet China's overall share of the energy minerals processing actually surpasses OPEC's 34% of oil market. 40% of copper, 70% of cobalt and lithium, and 90% for rare earth minerals. We must reverse this dangerous trend and secure our energy materials supply. We also must examine the role of petrochemical refiners for energy security and affordable transportation fuels. This is the goal of Mr. Latta's legislation. More predictable permitting is necessary to expand American energy supplies and to operate the facilities to process advanced materials. Several bills this morning will help grow energy markets, improve the permitting coordination with our North American energy partners and across states. Opening markets and providing access to these markets with pipelines and export terminals will increase the supplies that make energy and power more affordable. I want to thank Mr. Johnson, Mr. Armstrong, Dr. Burgess, and Mr. Guthrie for their leadership on solutions that update our export policies and ensure more coordinated and predictable permitting for energy infrastructure. I commend the work of Chair Duncan and Mrs. Lesko for developing their solutions on producing and transporting natural gas, a key energy source that is also low in emissions. And very importantly, I look forward to discussing Mr. Wahlberg's bipartisan bill to protect energy systems from hazards, especially cyber threats. We cannot achieve the full benefits of an American energy expansion without reforms like these. While President Biden is focused on command and control transition to unreliable and weather-dependent energy, we are leading today for American energy to build a prosperous future, a future that is more secure, clean, and affordable. This is a start, a solid start, to our energy agenda. Of course, there's more to do. We must confront our serious nuclear fuel security vulnerabilities, which are made worse by outdated policies that allowed our nuclear fuel infrastructure to atrophy to unacceptable levels. It is 1 year since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, yet more than 20% of nuclear fuels for American reactors continue to come from Russia. This amounted to over $850 million for the Russian regime last year alone. It is a major supply threat and a security threat. Congress must work to ban Russian imports and send the market signal needed to restore American nuclear fuel infrastructure. That is the purpose of my bill, H.R. 1042, the Reduce Russian Uranium Imports Act. I want to thank the ranking member Pallone for working with me to bring this bill to a future markup. We must work together to make sure that America is not reliant on Russia. With that, let's go to work, Mr. Chairman, for the American people and for our energy and national security. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady, and I'll now recognize the gentleman from New Jersey, the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Pallone, for 5 minutes opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today, committee Republicans are once again showing that they plan to prioritize the needs of big oil and gas companies over the needs of the American people. It's unfortunate because there are many members on our side of the aisle who have voiced interest in durable bipartisan solutions that would allow us to build more clean energy infrastructure to ensure we lead the world in the transition to a clean energy economy. This market demonstrates that's not the approach that the Republican majority is looking to take. Republicans love to talk about an all-of-the-above approach to building our energy assets, but none of the bills we are marking up either addresses or even references clean energy. This markup is in stark contrast to committee Democrats delivering historic wins for the American people. We enacted the Inflation Reduction Act that has already created more than 100,000 good-paying clean energy American jobs, will cut costs for working families, and tackle the worsening climate crisis. Today, Republicans are bringing up 8 partisan bills that have no chance of ever becoming law. They know this because they're literally some of the same bills that they pushed through the last time they were in charge of the House more than 4 years ago. And at that time, there was a Republican president and a Republican-controlled Senate, and they still couldn't get them enacted. But here they are again, attempting to move these same old bills. H.R. 1058, the Promoting Cross-Border Energy Infrastructure Act, is nothing more than a shadow approval of the Keystone pipeline masquerading as legislation. It establishes that every single cross-border energy project is presumptively in the public interest unless proven otherwise. And this is nothing more than a green light for oil and gas pipeline developers to construct international facilities without sufficient oversight from the federal government. H.R. 1130, the so-called Unlocking Our Domestic LNG Potential Act, removes the requirement that the Department of Energy determine proposed LNG exports are within the public interest. This Republican bill would lead to more American LNG being sent to China. So much for Republican claims of being tough on China. By removing the public interest tests for natural gas exports, both H.R. 1130 and H.Con.Res 17 create a handout to our geopolitical rivals and to Republicans' fossil fuel friends at the expense of the American consumer. At a time when many Americans across the country are suffering from high energy costs this winter, these Republican bills would ensure that the problem worsens in the coming years. H.R. 1115 effectively makes the Federal Energy Regulatory Commissioner, FERC, the final arbiter on all things environmentally review-related for natural gas pipelines. Unfortunately, in that process, it sets up a likely adversarial relationship between FERC and other federal and state agencies that play a role both in writing environmental reviews for pipelines and in the permitting process. I understand that Republicans believe this bill will speed up the process for natural gas pipeline approval, but I think it will actually do the opposite and turn what is currently a thorough collaborative process between agencies into an adversarial one. In fact, this was the fear that FERC's director of the Office of Energy Projects testified to back in 2017. Now, most of the remainder of the bills, I think, are meaningless, pure signals to the fossil fuel industry that Republicans support them. H.Con.Res 14 is a grasp to resurrect the Keystone pipeline, showing Republicans are still stuck in the energy debates of the last decade. H.R. 150 would override our environmental and public lands laws to protect big oil and gas's ability to frack. And H.R. 1085 merely generates a report representing the oil industry's views under the auspices of a government agency. There is one bill, however, that does have some potential, and that's H.R. 1160, a bipartisan bill sponsored by Representatives Schreier and Wahlberg, gets at an issue where we've been able to find some common ground with Republicans, and that's energy infrastructure, cybersecurity. We support the Department of Energy's role in protecting our electric infrastructure, and historically we've worked together on this important issue. But aside from this bill, none of the others offer real solutions to the complex energy problems and challenges of the 21st century. If Republicans really want to unleash American energy, I invite them to stop trying to tear down critical climate and environmental programs and work with us to build a better future for all by finding a way to build clean energy quickly without endangering our environment. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the gentleman. Before I recognize other members for an opening statement, I would like to enter into the record an article. It's actually an editorial board opinion from the Wall Street Journal. SOS for the U.S. electric grid really sums up some of the problems in the rush to renewables and where the shortfalls are going to be taking fossil fuel generation offline. So I enter that for the record without objection. So ordered. Okay, any members wishing to have an opening statement? Chair will recognize Mr. Latta for 3 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding today's markup. It's very important. I believe it's important that we acknowledge the fact that as Republicans promised, we're rolling up our sleeves and starting the work that the American people sent us here to do through regular order and in full transparency. Thank you, Madam Chair, and to our subcommittee chair for your shared commitment to ensuring this committee and subcommittee work as they were intended under the rules. Today, I'm glad to see that this subcommittee marking up a collection of bills that will put the United States back on track in our efforts to provide the American people with access to affordable and reliable energy. In just 2 years, the Biden administration has done immense harm to the cause of American energy independence. Rather than unleashing American energy, President Biden has begged countries like Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and the rest of OPEC for assistance with gas prices. Republicans understand that we should be supporting all domestic sources of energy development and not picking winners and losers in order to pursue costly and workable climate policies. The slate of bills before us today will kickstart our efforts to reverse these disastrous policies and return the United States to its position as the preeminent global energy producer. I look forward to discussing my legislation, Refiner Act, and hearing from my colleagues on their energy solutions as well. Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Any other members wishing to provide an opening statement? Mr. Pfluger is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the last several weeks, this committee has heard expert testimony, both here in D.C. and in my district in Midland, Texas, on the need for federal government to unleash American energy to supply the resources for our allies and lower the cost here at home. This administration has made it clear. The president campaigned on this. He said he was going to end fossil fuels. These efforts to reduce supply will not reduce demand of natural gas. It will only hand the keys to China and Russia while destroying American small businesses. The U.S. has the ability to supply the world with secure, reliable energy. Increasing exports to our partners and allies will strengthen their security, boost our economy, and make America stronger on the world stage. In my district in the Permian Basin, starting in 2008, in the shale revolution, we have literally transformed the world. We have literally lowered the cost for every American family. And it saddens me to hear the words of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who chose not to come to the field hearings, who chose not to meet my constituents, and calls my constituents big oil. I couldn't disagree with that more. I wish that my colleagues would come to Midland, Texas, and hear the testimony of Mayor Lori Blong, or hear the testimony of Adrian Carrasco, his 64 employees. I'm sorry, but these are not big oil. These are everyday families who are putting their hard work, their blood, sweat, and tears into actually reducing the cost for Americans to the tune of about $10,000 a year. To hear the word that allowing exports does nothing for our country, there is an all-out assault through every policy, through every executive order, through every piece of legislation in the last Congress on the industry that literally is the foundation for this country's economy and the foundation for this country's national security. And to think about Adrian Carrasco and his 64 employees in Midland, Texas, and to have my colleagues on the other side of the aisle call them big oil, when every single day, no matter how hot or how cold it is, they're going to work, they're putting food on the table for their families, they're making their community stronger, and in the process of doing so, they are providing affordable, reliable energy. I would like to thank the chairman of the full committee, Kathy McMorris Rogers, and the chairman of this subcommittee, Mr. Duncan, for actually getting back to the facts. It's kind of like we're living in the twilight zone with some of these testimonies. The facts don't support what this country actually needs. The narrative does not support what this country actually needs. Let's get to the facts. Let's look at the economy and the market forces that are at play. And by unleashing American energy and allowing private industry to do what it's done for so long, winning World War II and so many other factors throughout the decades, I think we're on the right track, and I commend the chairman for putting this markup together to unleash American energy. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Any other members wishing to provide an opening statement? Okay, hearing none, a point of personal privilege. I'm a grandfather. As of 5/19 yesterday, a little grandson, 8 pounds, 4 ounces, name's John Whalen, JW, or they're going to call him Duncan, and that's my middle son, John Phillip, JP. So anyway, all right, so that's what it's about, the future of this country, what we're doing for our kids and our grandkids, and so I'm excited. All right, let's get to work. Chair will now call up H.R. 1068 and ask the clerk to report the bill.
H.R. 1068, to amend the Department of Energy Organization Act to secure the supply of critical energy resources, including critical minerals and other materials, and for other purposes.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with, and the bill will be open for amendment at any point. So ordered. Are there bipartisan amendments to the bill? Hearing none. Any other amendments to the bill?
This is 1068, right?
All right. So the chair will now recognize the author of the bill, H.R. 1068, as amended, or not amended, to speak on it. Mr. Bouchon, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm excited to be here today to participate in the markup of 9 important pieces of legislation that work together to unleash American energy production. I want to make special note of this bill, H.R. 1068, the Securing America's Critical Mineral Supply Act, and this should be a bipartisan goal. Over the last few years, this committee has discussed the importance of critical minerals and other energy resources necessary to providing for our energy needs. We also know we must consider the potential vulnerabilities of existing supply chains and domestic production and processing capacity. With new sources of energy generation coming online, we must take steps to ensure we safeguard the supply chains of our energy resources to protect our constituents from major price fluctuations in their energy bills, as well as prevent our adversaries from weaponizing potential vulnerabilities in these supply chains. Currently, the U.S. imports 65% of its rare earth minerals. These rare earth minerals are required for a diverse, all-of-the-above energy transition. By importing these materials from foreign countries, the U.S. is left beholden to manipulation, potentially from foreign adversaries. The U.S. could produce these minerals in a manner that is cleaner and safer than other parts of the world, where production is tied to dangerous working conditions, child labor exploitation, and extremely low pay. I believe H.R. 1068 will provide the Department of Energy an essential tool to help secure our nation's energy needs by ensuring that the Secretary of Energy is engaged productively in addressing this multifaceted issue. Specifically, the bill would require the Secretary of Energy to conduct an assessment of our nation's energy supply, identify resources that are critical to our economy and vulnerabilities in the supply chains of critical energy resources, and determine the extent to which critical energy resources play a role in developing new energy technologies. The bill defines critical energy resources as those that are, quote, essential to the energy sector and energy systems of the United States, and the supply chain of which is vulnerable to disruption. The bill would also direct the Secretary of Energy to diversify energy sourcing and increase domestic production, refining, and processing of these critical resources. As a supporter of an all-of-the-above energy approach, it is crucial that we take steps to safeguard and secure the energy resources necessary to keep the lights on, rates down, and emissions low. I want to thank those of my colleagues who are already co-sponsors of this legislation, and I urge all members of the subcommittee to support H.R. 1068. I yield back the balance of my time.
Does any other member wish to be recognized on the bill? Gentleman's recognized.
Thank
What
you.
purpose do you seek recognition?
Mr. Chair, I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I voice my opposition to H.R. 1068, the Securing America's Critical Infrastructure Act. The Department of Energy is doing great work on developing and enhancing critical mineral supply chains. I do not have a problem with codifying these efforts into DOE's responsibilities under the DOE Organization Act, but unfortunately, this bill goes well beyond that goal. I and many of my Democratic colleagues acknowledge that critical minerals are an important part of the clean energy transition, but this bill is about much more than just critical minerals and creates ambiguities which could be exploited by the oil and gas industry. First, this bill uses a definition of critical energy resource, which is incredibly broad and open to interpretation. It could apply to anything pertaining to energy, including natural gas, petroleum, and coal. It is certainly not restricted to critical minerals and is not designed to actually help our transition to clean energy alternatives. This will also come up later at today's Environment Subcommittee markup, but this overly broad definition of critical energy resources is a non-starter. Additionally, this bill creates ambiguity by potentially expanding DOE authority over domestic production, separation, and processing, authorities that have been traditionally housed at the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Interior. DOE has great expertise. We should identify where the agency excels and give them clear direction to focus on those given issues. Unfortunately, by expanding their mandate into areas that have traditionally been led by EPA and Interior, we're moving away from those agencies' expertise of how best to protect the communities and lands in extraction and production processes. With that said, I do think there are bipartisan efforts that we could work on to address our nation's critical mineral needs. For example, there are cutting-edge technology developers working to improve the transparency of critical mineral supply chains. They are developing voluntary digital battery identification systems so that manufacturers can easily know and verify where minerals are being sourced from. Bringing this added transparency to battery manufacturing is an important step towards supporting domestic sources of these minerals, including from recyclers. So rather than masquerading under critical energy resource, which could mean oil, gas, and coal, we should work together on specific critical mineral issues, which everyone here acknowledges need to be addressed to support the transition to clean energy. I truly hope that we can find some common ground on these issues, but unfortunately this bill, along with so many of the other under consideration today, are not going to address our nation's energy needs. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield back my time and encourage members to oppose this bill.
Gentleman yields back. Any other member seeking recognition? Seeing none, the question now occurs on forwarding H.R. 1068 to the full committee. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. And the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Bouchon, ask for a roll call vote.
Okay. The gentleman asked for a roll call vote, so the clerk will call the roll.
Rep. Burgess. Rep. Burgess votes aye. Rep. Latta. Rep. Latta votes aye. Rep. Guthrie. Rep. Guthrie votes aye. Rep. Griffith. Rep. Johnson. Rep. Johnson votes aye. Rep. Bouchon. Rep. Bouchon votes aye. Rep. Wahlberg. Rep. Wahlberg votes aye. Rep. Palmer. Rep. Palmer votes aye. Rep. Curtis. Rep. Curtis votes aye. Rep. Lesko. Rep. Lesko votes aye. Rep. Pence. Rep. Pence votes aye. Rep. Armstrong. Rep. Armstrong votes aye. Rep. Weber. Rep. Balderson. Rep. Balderson votes aye. Rep. Pfluger. Rep. Pfluger votes aye. Rep. Rogers. Rep. Rogers votes aye. Rep. Duncan. Rep. Duncan votes aye. Rep. DeGette. Rep. DeGette votes no. Rep. Peters. Rep. Fletcher. Rep. Matsui. Rep. Matsui votes no. Rep. Tonko. Rep. Tonko votes no. Rep. Vesey. Rep. Vesey votes no. Rep. Custer. Rep. Custer votes no. Rep. Schreier. Rep. Schreier votes no. Rep. Castor. Rep. Castor votes no. Rep. Sarbanes. Rep. Cardenas. Rep. Blunt Rochester. Rep. Pallone.
No.
Rep. Pallone votes no.
Any other members wishing to record a vote? Clerk will report the total.
Chair Duncan, on that vote, we have 15 ayes and 8 noes.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bill is agreed to. Chair now calls up H.R. 1121. Ask clerk to report.
H.R. 1121, to prohibit a moratorium on the use of hydraulic fracturing.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with, and the bill will be open for amendment at any point. So ordered. Any bipartisan amendments to the bill? Any other amendments to the bill? Chair will now recognize the gentleman, which is myself, for an opening statement on the bill. H.R. 1121 prevents the president from implementing a fracking ban, prohibits the president from declaring a moratorium on the use of hydraulic fracturing unless Congress authorizes such a moratorium. It also expresses a sense of Congress that states should maintain primacy for the regulation of oil and gas production on state and private lands. That's where the success happened in North Dakota, Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma, and other energy-producing states over the last decade or more. Under current law, each state has primary regulatory authority over oil and gas, natural gas production. This was made clear in the Bipartisan Energy Policy Act 2005. State regulatory bodies are best informed to regulate operations in their own state, and this bill reaffirms that. America has been blessed with an abundance of natural resources. The discovery of natural gas through the shale revolution has launched America toward energy dominance. Innovation in the oil and gas sector has made the United States a leader in not only energy production, but also emissions reductions. Unfortunately, the Biden administration has continued to wage war on American energy, which implicitly creates uncertainty, causing energy investments to stall. President Biden has promised to end oil and gas production in the United States multiple times and have followed through with executive actions and regulations that have made energy more difficult to produce. Should he take his actions a step further and impose a moratorium on fracking, energy prices would rise, disproportionately hurting low-income and middle-class Americans. It'll quickly force the United States into being a net importer and increase the cost of numerous hydrocarbon-derived products, face masks, fertilizer, diapers, plastics, renewables, electric vehicles, and there's a whole litany of things that come out of a barrel of hydrocarbons. Placing a moratorium on hydraulic fracturing would mean a $900 billion increase in U.S. energy costs, $7.1 trillion in potential losses to the U.S. economy through the year 2030. With the cost of living dramatically increasing for all Americans, an increase in the cost of energy will most affect the wallets of our most vulnerable citizens. Natural gas is a clean, affordable, and reliable source of energy. We should be increasing production, not prohibiting that. The United States produces energy cleaner, safer than nearly anywhere in the world, and we need policies that reflect this reality instead of ones that undercut our successes. We need to unleash more American energy, not the other way around. More innovations in the energy sector, like we saw in the shale revolution, is the best way to reduce emissions, bring down prices, undercut the leverage of our adversaries internationally. So I urge support of H.R. 1121 to increase American energy production and restore energy leadership. And with that, I will yield back.
Mr. Chairman, would you yield to me?
Yes, I'll yield.
Thank you. And, you know, it's just difficult to overstate the importance that the Energy Policy Act of 2005 had to natural gas production in this country. And I can't believe that it's necessary to continue to try to protect that. But indeed, here we are today, and it is, and so I'm grateful that the chairman is providing that protection. But I will just remind you, as we sat in this committee in 2005, the United States was facing a shortage of natural gas. The people from the American Chemistry Council were coming into my office saying, what are we going to do? We won't have the feedstock for chemicals that we need to manufacture. Farmers were coming in and saying, what are we going to do? We won't have the fertilizer that we need to grow our crops. And all of this was addressed in the Energy Policy Act of 2005 by placing a restriction on the regulations that could be placed on this relatively new technology. It's important to me because the district that I represent was kind of the birthplace for that with Devon Energy. The Barnett Shale was 8,000 feet below our feet, and fracking made exposition of the gas from that shale possible. And to be perfectly honest, in the 2008 recession, we could hardly feel it in my part of North Texas because of the benefits that shale gas brought our economy locally. That benefit accrues to my state, to our country. We should not foreclose upon it easily. So I thank the gentleman for bringing his bill today. It's critically important. It is the work that this committee has provided, the foundation which we laid in the Energy Policy Act of 2005. Let's not soon forget that. I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and I yield back the balance. Any other members wishing to be recognized? Gentleman from Texas recognized.
Mr. Chairman.
For what purpose do you seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I seek recognition to speak.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that I won't be supporting the amendment. I think that a lot of this is really designed and aimed to hurt the president. I don't think that is necessarily a good debate over gas policy and energy security. Congressman Burgess is right. SH Griffin number 4, that was the natural gas well that started the fracking revolution in his district. It was a Mitchell gas well, in his district in Denton County that kind of kicked it all off. And we need to talk about, some of these things, but I think that the way that we're talking about them today is not right. And just wanted to make that known, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for yielding to me.
Any other member seeking recognition? Mr. Pfluger, what purpose do you seek recognition?
Well, Chairman, thank you for bringing this extremely important bill. When you look at the choices that Germany has made, 20 years ago, when they decided to end fracking, they are now coming to the United States of America and they're asking for our product because they don't have it. They're trying to diversify away from Russian natural gas. And when you look at what the shale revolution has done, we are over 40% cleaner than Russian natural gas. I see several members on the other side of the aisle who actually were in Midland last week. I would invite every member to come. Please come and see a well completion. I invite you to come to my district. I was disappointed to not have more when we had a field hearing.
Will the gentleman yield?
Sure.
So I agree these field hearings are very important. And as I just mentioned to the chairman, this field hearing was held without consultation during a recess week, without consultation to the minority. And many of us would have liked to have been at that field hearing. I wouldn't have interrupted it to say this, but the gentleman has now said it twice. So next time we have a field hearing, if it's cleared through my schedule at least, I will be happy to join you. And P.S., I've been to wells in Colorado too. Thank you.
In reclaiming my time, I invite anyone to come at any point in time, regardless of whether we have a field hearing or not. But it's so critically important what this industry has done, not because the government has told them to do it. And I think this bill protects what we originally did through private industry, not through the government, not through government mandate, not through anything the EPA or FERC or any of the other agencies said, but because private industry wanted to make it more efficient, more affordable, more reliable. And now we're in a situation where just this morning, the Embassy of Japan has said, can I please meet with you? And I know the ranking member knows this very well, that the Embassy of Japan said, can we please meet with you because we need LNG, we need product. That is how we do business here in the United States. We cannot follow the path that countries like Germany and others have gone down, where now, 20 years later, their policies have put their entire populations into a real problem of not having affordable, reliable energy. I want to commend the chairman for an excellent bill that we should not have to legislate. But unfortunately, because of political climate, we do. Once again, anybody on the other side of the aisle is welcome to come to my district or any others where we do this, and we do it better than anybody else in the world. That's why we need to keep these American jobs here and continue not only to supply our needs, but those of our partners and allies. I yield back.
Will the gentleman yield? The gentleman yield? Thank you. I remember in the 1990s, I was up in Abilene, north of Abilene, Texas. Energy producing area, but at that time wasn't really known for the energy that was produced. As we quail hunted through the area, I saw the pipelines from the oil well production. We got to talking about energy. The gentleman I was hunting with started talking about the oil that was trapped in the shell. He picked up a piece of shell and cracked it open and set it on a flat rock in the sun. And he said, we're going to hunt around and we're going to come back by this area. And I want you to look at this rock when we come back by. Came back by an hour and a half, 2 hours later. Shell had been sitting in the sunshine. Oil was leaking out of it. Oil trapped in that shell. That's what hydraulic fracturing does, is it releases the oil in the shell. Holds that frac open so that oil can flow and be pumped to the surface to be produced. That's what it is. It's pretty simple. But I thank the gentleman for pointing out that field hearings are important. I want to thank the ranking member for letting us know why they didn't attend. And I want to encourage this committee, under our chairman, to continue doing more field hearings to educate us on both sides of the aisle on issues that are important to the Energy Subcommittee and to the Energy and Commerce Full Committee. And with that, I'll yield back to the gentleman who yields back to me.
Ms. Pfluger, will you yield for the last few seconds?
The time's Mr. Pfluger's.
Mr. Pfluger, will you yield? Thank you so much. And by the way, you were a gracious host. And I enjoyed going to Midland as one of the few Democratic members that was able to clear his calendar at the last minute and make it. And I just want to let you know that that wasn't the first, I'm sorry, but that wasn't the first time I went to Midland. The first time I went to Midland, I went all the way out there, a couple of plane flights, and then in a vehicle, et cetera, for a couple hours, and went out to an actual rig and actually got the workers there to explain to me what it was like working there, et cetera. So I personally do appreciate the opportunity that it is as an economic engine for that community, but also I think that what we should be talking about in Congress is not only appetite, but responsibility and how we move forward. So thank you so much. Thank you for yielding.
Gentlemen, time's expired. Any other member seeking recognition? Ms. Castro from Florida is recognized. For what purpose do you seek recognition?
To speak in opposition to the bill, to strike the last word.
Gentleman, ladies recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Protecting American Energy Production Act does not protect American interest. It does not protect the pocketbooks of the American people. It protects the profits of big oil and gas. Big oil and gas, they are already making the largest profits in history. And it's clear now that as gas prices spiked last year after Putin's invasion of Ukraine, oil and gas companies could have lowered the price at the pump. They could have lowered electricity bills. We were in a time of crisis. We still are supporting our brothers and sisters in Ukraine from Putin's unprovoked invasion. But instead, they made a decision to gouge consumers. So that's why it's hard to look at the whole range of bills here today and say, gosh, this is really good news for American consumers, because it's not. It's really good news for the big oil CEOs and their shareholders. These bills would keep American consumers and businesses tied to volatile oil and gas prices over time, does nothing to expand on cleaner, cheaper energy. What will lower costs and create jobs, help us build safer communities, healthier communities across America? That will be clean energy. What do we know about hydraulic fracking, hydraulic fracturing? There are many places across the country where it should not be happening. Oftentimes, fracking poisons the water, it contaminates the air, especially if you're in proximity to the fracking operations. Proximity to fracking is associated with congenital heart defects, increased high-risk pregnancy and premature birth, worsening asthma, and increased rates of hospitalization for cardiac, neurological, and cancer-related problems. When you're talking about fracking, you're also talking about methane. Methane accelerates the costly climate crisis. It's a more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide over its first 100 years in the atmosphere, more fully 86 times more potent over its first 20 years. Methane has been found to leak from fracking wells, equipment, and pipelines at rates that make it worse for the environment even than coal. Those leakage rates, if sustained, move us all the more closer to climate catastrophes. We're already suffering through higher costs across the board driven by the warming planet. And when you double down here on fossil fuels, making it easier to drill and frack and lifting the environmental and health safeguards, what you're saying to the American people and to businesses is here's a bill, here's a higher bill, a higher cost bill you're going to have to pay for everything caused by climate change. Drought, crop collapse, property insurance, just plain insurance back home because of the escalating risks of the climate crisis. What should we be doing is building on clean energy resources. Clean energy is cheaper energy, and thank goodness that we have passed the Inflation Reduction Act that will help deploy cleaner, cheaper energy faster, and it will help lower energy bills for American families and businesses. For example, significant tax credits for solar energy, microgrid technology, expanded ITC eligibility for interconnection cost, and wind and solar. In fact, in the months following
President Biden's signing of the Inflation Reduction Act, we've seen about $40 billion of investment across America in clean energy projects. And many of these projects are going into Republican states, red states. That's great. But this is how we're going to build energy security for the American people. It's how we're going to build a healthier society, not doubling down and giving away freebies to big oil and gas. So I urge my colleagues to oppose this bill and really turn a critical eye to a lot of these giveaways to big oil and gas that we'll be debating today. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Washington seek recognition?
Strike the last word. and
Gentlelady's
support the
recognized.
amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm reflecting on a congressional delegation led by former Chairman Fred Upton from this committee when we went to Europe back in the spring of 2015, in May of 2015. And several of the members on the committee were visiting in Europe at that time. Putin had taken Crimea the previous year. That winter, he had turned off natural gas pipelines into Ukraine. And Ukraine was begging us for more natural gas. They had, and we were inspired by their fight for independence and self-determination. And I was reminded, and we saw firsthand, how important energy was to that fight for independence and self-determination, and having energy from their partners and allies, not being dependent upon Putin. It was also on that trip that we met with the NATO general who explained to us that Putin was the one funding the NGOs in Europe that were anti-fracking. New technology from the United States of America that had unleashed American gas. The shale revolution. It was extraordinary. And we were celebrating in the United States of America that it had brought down the cost of natural gas. It had actually been the driver in leading us in reducing carbon emissions. Natural gas is probably one of the best things that we could do for the world, is to unleash natural gas. And Putin was educating the Europeans as to the dangers of fracking. Yes, don't do fracking, and they didn't. And he was funding the NGOs that were educating the Europeans. So they didn't do fracking. And instead, Europe remained dependent upon Putin. Russia and Ukraine needed the Russian natural gas. I share this because this is so important. This legislation is very important. This is a key part of American energy that is so important to our economy, our national security, American leadership, and supporting our allies around the world. And I'm proud to support it, and I wanted to yield to a gentleman from Texas.
I think the chairman. I was in Florida's 14th district on Tuesday of last week, which is Tampa Bay. And the port director and many of the folks that were there mentioned how grateful they were because 45% of Florida's oil and gas comes through Tampa Bay, through the port of Tampa Bay. And I think the residents of Florida, and I forget the exact population, 20 million maybe, are very grateful for the fact that they have this energy that comes through. That is all coming from Port Arthur and Corpus Christi, Houston, Louisiana. Those products are flowing through, and I'd like to push back on the fact that hydraulic fracturing is poisonous to human beings, that it's poisonous to the earth, that the chemicals that are used in it and in these tours, and I'd like to invite my colleague who said that to come and see the hydraulic fracturing, to actually taste the chemicals that are used to mix with water and sand, because you can do that, because they're that safe. And so this notion that they're actually poisoning humans or causing congenital heart failure is false. It's not true. There was a quote recently that said, Exxon made more money than God, but not near as much as Apple. That was from the President of the United States, from President Biden. And on April 20th of 2020, I didn't see the outcry at oil going to negative $30+ a barrel, but it did. And yet they've survived. And the reinvestment into this industry has not happened because of the ESG environment that we face, which I'm certain that we'll get to. I think this point, yield to my friend from North Dakota.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, we talk a lot about this, and it's cheaper and more reliable. I just have to point out again, everything is cheaper and more reliable if you give it grants, subsidies, and tax credits. We have created a federal tax structure in which you can sell an electron onto the grid from a renewable source for less than it costs to produce. Everything is cheaper if you throw billions and billions of federal dollars at it. And when you're talking about places where I live and where my constituents live as some kind of toxic environment, I think we should do another field hearing. I think we should go to the Democratic Republic of the Congo and look at a cobalt mine. Or let's go drink downstream from a Malaysian lithium mine and talk about what is and isn't clean energy. And with that, I yield back.
Gentlelady's time's expired. Any other member seeking recognition? Ms. Curtis, for what purpose do you seek recognition?
Strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. I'd like to take just a minute to address the comments that we heard from my colleague from Florida. If I heard correctly, the comment was that we're doing this because we want to help big oil. And first thing I have to ask myself, who is big oil? I'm not sure exactly, but we hear that term thrown around all the time. It feels to me that it's part of the demonization of the many good men and women in large and small corporations around the world that for decades and decades have contributed to our quality of life and our ability to stay warm in the winter and cold in the summer. I know personally in my district, they don't see themselves as big oil. They see themselves as contributing to the productivity of this country. I would advocate that our purpose for the bills this morning is not to help big oil. I don't know any of us that really care about that, but it's to avoid what's happened in Europe. And you've heard that alluded to here this morning. A year ago, I found myself in Europe several days before the war broke out and while the war was breaking out and several days after the war broke out. And I heard some of the things that have been referred to today. Just 15 years ago, Europe produced as much natural gas as Russia, just 15 years ago. And they decided that they weren't going to frack. So today, they buy fracked natural gas from Russia. They're dependent on their enemy for fuel. They have an unstable, unreliable source. They're paying exorbitant amounts for that fuel. And I can't speak for all my colleagues, but that's why I'm supporting these bills today. I want to make sure that we don't go down a path that robs us of our energy independence, that robs us of affordable, reliable power, and at the end of the day, like Europe, produces more greenhouse gas emissions than before they started down this road. I think I speak for me and my colleagues that we want to be reliable, we want to be affordable, and we want to be clean. And that's the intent of our bills today. And with that, I yield back my time.
Any other member seeking recognition? Gentleman from Alabama, what purpose do you seek recognition?
I'd like to speak in support of the bill and move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been in so many of these hearings, and I keep hearing people talk about what the existential threat is. I just want to let you know that I think the policies of this administration have become an existential threat not only to our economic security but to our national security. The war in Ukraine did not create the energy crisis, despite what some of our colleagues might believe. It exposed it. To my colleague from Utah's points there, 15 years ago, Europe was producing as much natural gas as Russia was. But over the last decade and a half, they have allowed their hydrocarbon infrastructure to go into decline. Today, Germany's electricity prices are 3 or 4 times higher than they are here. In the UK, energy consumption residential energy consumption has declined by 10%, not because they've become more efficient, Mr. Chairman, but because they can't afford it. That's where this country is heading. There are 4 things that the modern world depends on: cement, steel, plastic, and fertilizer. Natural gas is essential to all 4. 80% of ammonia nitrate, of the cost of ammonia nitrate fertilizer, which we depend on to produce our food, is natural gas. It is a national security issue to be taking down our hydrocarbon infrastructure. China is building a coal-fired plant, one about every 2 weeks, but they've built 14 outside of China. They are bringing power to sub-Saharan African countries. They're moving into Latin America, and we're letting it happen. And we're sitting here with this ESG mentality, this attitude that we're going to go completely renewable, and from an engineering and technological perspective, it will not happen. We're undermining our own national security and the national security of the Western Hemisphere by doing this. I applaud you for bringing this bill. We need to secure our hydrocarbon infrastructure. We're not depending on any other nation for our energy security. We have it right here. But if we go to 100% renewables, we will be dependent on China. And if there's anything that we can learn from the war in Ukraine, it's that no nation should be dependent on an adversarial nation for its energy supply. It becomes a massive national security issue, and I yield back.
Will the gentleman yield?
I'll be happy to yield.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. You know, we set out in this session to find common sense solutions to address the energy crisis that we have. And I think a good faith effort is being made to seek bipartisan solutions in that effort. But I tell you, when we have members that make absurd allegations that hydraulic fracturing contaminates the water table, when in fact there hasn't been an EPA administrator since the Obama administration that has agreed with that. In fact, they said there is no proof that hydraulic fracturing contaminates the water. It's right the opposite. It's proven very safe and has been for a very long time. I would just urge my colleagues, if we want to have substantive, bipartisan negotiations to come to bipartisan solutions to address both energy and climate issues, then we need to be willing to sit down and have an honest conversation and stop acting like environmental activists in the process. And with that, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just conclude with this. We keep hearing what the science says, and the science that I'm reading is different from what I'm hearing. What I'm hearing is political science. I just want to point out, since 1970, because of natural gas, our carbon dioxide emissions have gone down 32%. We've also reduced the emissions of the 6 criteria gases that the EPA tracks by 86%, even though our economy has grown by 142%. We're on the right track with the changes that we're making and the use of hydrocarbons, and we should stay on that track. And with that, Mr. Chairman, unless someone wants the last 10 seconds, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Any other members seeking recognition? Seeing none, the question now occurs on forwarding H.R. 1121 to the full committee. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Request a recorded vote.
Recorded vote has been requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Rep. Burgess. Rep. Burgess votes aye. Rep. Latta. Rep. Latta votes aye. Rep. Guthrie. Rep. Guthrie votes aye. Rep. Griffith. Rep. Johnson. Rep. Johnson votes aye. Rep. Bouchon. Rep. Bouchon votes aye. Rep. Wahlberg. Rep. Wahlberg votes aye. Rep. Palmer. Rep. Palmer votes aye. Rep. Curtis. Rep. Curtis votes aye. Rep. Lesko. Rep. Lesko votes aye. Rep. Pence. Rep. Armstrong. Rep. Armstrong votes aye. Rep. Weber. Rep. Weber votes aye. Rep. Balderson. Rep. Balderson votes aye. Rep. Pfluger. Rep. Pfluger votes aye. Rep. Rogers. Rep. Rogers votes aye. Rep. Duncan. Rep. Duncan votes aye. Rep. DeGette. Rep. DeGette votes no. Rep. Peters. Rep. Peters votes no. Rep. Fletcher. Rep. Matsui. No. Rep. Matsui votes no. Rep. Tonko.
No.
Rep. Tonko votes no. Rep. Vesey. Rep. Vesey votes no. Rep. Custer. Rep. Custer votes no. Rep. Schreier. Rep. Schreier votes no. Rep. Castor. Rep. Castor votes no. Rep. Sarbanes. Rep. Cardenas. Rep. Cardenas votes no. Rep. Blunt Rochester. Rep. Blunt Rochester votes no. Rep. Pallone. Rep. Pallone votes no.
How's Mr. Pence recorded?
Mr. Pence is not recorded. Mr. Pence votes aye.
Any member wishing to change their vote? Clerk will report the total.
Chair Duncan, on that vote, we have 16 ayes and 11 noes.
The ayes have it, and the bill is agreed to. Chair will now call up H.R. 1085 and ask clerk to report the bill.
H.R. 1085, to require the Secretary of Energy to direct the National Petroleum Council to issue a report with respect to petrochemical refineries in the United States and for other purposes.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. The bill will be open for amendment at any point so ordered. Are there any bipartisan amendments to the bill? Any other amendments to the bill? Chair will now recognize the author of the bill, Mr. Latta, to discuss the bill for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you very much for holding this markup today. And I am proud to offer H.R. 1085, the Refiner Act, which aims to help address the problems we're facing when it comes to boosting petrochemical refining capacity in our nation. In the last 3 years, North America has lost over 1 million barrels of fuel per day in refining capacity. At the same time, demand for energy has skyrocketed. This has stretched our refineries thin and forced them to run at close to 95% of total capacity. We need to ensure refining capacity can keep up with demand and keep prices affordable for all Americans. The Refiner Act would direct the National Petroleum Council to examine the importance of petrochemical refineries to energy security and issue a report that contains an analysis of these refineries and opportunities to expand that capacity. This legislation will give us the blueprint we need to reverse our nation's losses in the refining industry and restore our ability to meet the energy needs of the American people. I urge my colleagues to approve H.R. 1085, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Any further discussion on the bill? Mr. Pence, what purpose do you seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 1085, the Refiner Act, which I co-sponsored with Congressman Latta. Petroleum is the lifeblood of the U.S. economy. Whether it's for manufacturing facilities, the trucking industry, or our farmers, petrochemicals are the bedrock of Indiana's economic growth. Refineries across the country have repeatedly told Congress and the administration that they are already reaching maximum capacity. Instead of alleviating these pressures, lower prices for hardworking Americans, the Biden administration is slapping regulations onto oil and gas companies and deterring necessary investment. The president falsely blames the petroleum industry for high energy prices facing Hoosiers and all Americans. After 2 long years, it has become clear that the find and fine approach of this administration is wrong for Hoosier communities and puts Americans at risk. The Refiner Act is a critical step to putting our nation back on track to a reliable, affordable, and secure energy future. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on this bill, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Any further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, Chair, the question now occurs on forwarding H.R. 1085 to the full committee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Mr. Chairman.
Opposed, no.
If we could have a
Opinion of
roll
the
call
chair, the
vote,
ayes
Mr.
have
Chairman.
Ask for a roll call vote.
Roll call.
Roll call vote has been requested. Clerk will report will call the roll.
Rep. Burgess. Rep. Burgess votes aye. Rep. Latta. Rep. Latta votes aye. Rep. Guthrie. Rep. Guthrie votes aye. Rep. Griffith. Rep. Johnson. Rep. Bouchon. Rep. Bouchon votes aye. Rep. Wahlberg. Rep. Wahlberg votes aye. Rep. Palmer. Rep. Curtis. Rep. Curtis votes aye. Rep. Lesko. Rep. Lesko votes aye. Rep. Pence. Rep. Pence votes aye. Rep. Armstrong. Rep. Weber. Rep. Weber votes aye. Rep. Balderson. Rep. Balderson votes aye. Rep. Pfluger. Rep. Pfluger votes aye. Rep. Rogers. Rep. Rogers votes aye. Rep. Duncan. Rep. Duncan votes aye. Rep. DeGette. Rep. DeGette votes no. Rep. Peters. Rep. Peters votes no. Rep. Fletcher. Rep. Matsui. Rep. Matsui votes no. Rep. Tonko.
No.
Rep. Tonko votes no. Rep. Vesey. Rep. Vesey votes no. Rep. Custer. Rep. Custer votes no. Rep. Schreier. Rep. Schreier votes no. Rep. Castor. Rep. Castor votes no. Rep. Sarbanes. Rep. Cardenas. Rep. Cardenas votes no. Rep. Blunt Rochester. Rep. Blunt Rochester votes no. Rep. Pallone. Rep. Pallone votes no.
Have all members voted?
Mr. Chairman,
How's Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Johnson is not recorded. Mr. Johnson votes aye.
How's Mr. Palmer recorded?
Mr. Palmer is not recorded. Mr. Palmer votes aye.
How's Mr. Armstrong reported?
Mr. Armstrong is not recorded. Mr. Armstrong votes aye.
How's Ms. Fletcher?
Ms. Fletcher is not recorded.
Fletcher votes yes.
Ms. Fletcher votes aye.
Have all members voted? Clerk will report the total.
Chair Duncan, on that vote, we have 17 ayes and 11 noes.
The ayes have it, and the bill is agreed to. Chair will next call up H.R. 1058. Ask clerk to report the bill.
H.R. 1058, to establish a more uniform, transparent, and modern process to authorize the construction, connection, and operation and maintenance of international border crossing facilities for the import and export of oil and natural gas and the transmission of electricity.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with, and the bill will be open for amendment any time. So ordered. The chair will recognize Mr. Armstrong for the sponsor of the bill for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've seen firsthand the consequences of having cross-border infrastructural approval process that is not dependable for projects which take years to complete from conception to operation. Capital is chased out of the market, infrastructure is strained, and we have supply chain bottlenecks that hamper our economy. The Promoting Cross-Border Energy Infrastructure Act would create a uniform and transparent process for the construction, connection, and operation of international energy border crossing facilities by replacing the existing presidential permit structure with a straightforward and understandable statutory process. H.R. 1058 would authorize the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to review applications for cross-border oil and natural gas pipelines, and similarly authorize the Department of Energy to review applications for cross-border electric transmission facilities. The committee has a long history with the Promoting Cross-Border Energy Infrastructure Act. Similar versions of this bill have been subject to committee hearings, markups, and passed the House of Representatives with bipartisan support. This committee has heard testimony from FERC, stakeholders, and expert witnesses about the implementation and benefit associated with this bill. That said, I want to again point out what this bill does not do. This bill has nothing in it that would repeal the applicable environmental protection statutes governing pipeline approvals. Again, nothing in this bill addresses environmental reviews. Additionally, the bill does not impact the ability of states or federal agencies to carry out their statutory responsibilities for energy infrastructure deployment. I urge a yes vote on the Promoting Cross-Border Energy Infrastructure Act because we need to streamline the approval process and implement reasonable timelines for our consideration. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Any further discussion? Mr. Pallone from New Jersey recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I speak in opposition to H.R. 1058, the Promoting Cross-Border Energy Infrastructure Act. This bill would overhaul the presidential permit process for cross-border oil and natural gas pipelines, along with transmission wires, and create a presumption that any cross-border energy transmission is in the public interest. It would also resurrect the specter of Keystone Pipeline, which has been dead for nearly 2 years now. When Republicans brought this bill up the last time they were in power, they made no effort to hide the linkage between the pipeline and this bill, nor do they do so now. This bill would provide a process for that project, that's Keystone, to once again rise from the dead and seek a certificate to once again threaten hundreds of communities across the nation with dangerous oil spills and contaminated water. But even setting aside Keystone, this bill is bad policy. It asks FERC and the Department of Energy to forego their traditional consultations with the Departments of State and Defense and instead step far outside their bounds as energy regulators and involve themselves in international affairs. It asks FERC to cite oil pipelines, an activity the agency has never had control over, without any additional resources to build the staff capacity for how to do that. The bill is also frankly unclear. It's unclear about what length of a pipeline or transmission line these new certificates of crossing it creates would apply to. It creates contradictory deadlines for approving natural gas imports and exports to and from Canada and Mexico. In one section, saying an application must be approved within 30 days, an impossible deadline to meet, and in another, saying that an agency must take action 120 days after the NEPA review has concluded. And these are not new issues. This bill was marked up in this subcommittee 6 years ago, and Democrats raised some of these same concerns then. They were ignored, and the bill before us today is nearly identical to the one that came before us back then. And the previous version of the bill passed the House, but only to die in the Senate. And I think this bill is destined to suffer the same fate. I don't know why our Republican majority insists on using valuable committee time to push ideas that didn't even have a chance when Republicans controlled the House and the Senate and the presidency. So I don't think this is serious. And with that, I urge my colleagues to oppose this bill, and I yield back my time, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does Mr. Wahlberg seek recognition?
Amendment at the desk.
Gentleman has an amendment at the desk. Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 1058, offered by Rep. Wahlberg. Page 8, after line 3, insert the following. Prohibition on revocation of presidential permits. Notwithstanding any other provision of law, the President may not revoke a presidential permit or similar permit issued pursuant to Executive Order Number 13337, Executive Order Number 11423, Executive Order Number 12038, Executive Order Number 10485, or any other executive order for the construction, connection, operation, or maintenance of an oil or natural gas pipeline or electric transmission facility or any border crossing facility thereof, unless such revocation is authorized by an act of Congress.
Mr. Wahlberg's recognized to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment would add complementary language from my legislation, H.R. 1197, the Protecting International Pipelines for Energy Security, or PIPES Act. The amendment prohibits the President from revoking any presidential permit or authorization for the construction, operation, or maintenance of an oil, natural gas, pipeline, electric transmission facility, or any cross-border facility. Our energy and national security should not be subject to the whims of the executive branch. We saw the consequences of this in 2021 when President Biden unilaterally revoked a permit for the Keystone XL pipeline, halting the $9 billion project that was meant to carry 830,000 barrels per day of crude oil from Canada to the United States. The same year, there were reports that the President was considering shutting down Line 5 in Michigan, which carries 540,000 barrels per day of light crude oil and natural gas that heats homes, powers businesses, and fills up vehicles across the Midwest. Remember, this doesn't mean that the crude oil and natural gas are not being brought into the United States, but rather they must travel by rail or truck, which are both more expensive, slower, and less safe, even as we've seen in Ohio just recently, tragically, than pipelines. If this was really about protecting the environment and lowering costs, the Biden administration would be working with us to modernize existing pipelines and build new ones. Thankfully, the legislation offered by my friend Mr. Armstrong will actually help us accomplish this by establishing a more uniform and transparent process to authorize construction and maintenance of cross-border energy facilities. It rightfully takes the approval power away from the politics of presidential permits and gives it to FERC and DOE. My amendment would place revocation power only with Congress. Together, our two bills ensure that who sits in the White House doesn't hinder America's energy security. I encourage my colleagues to support the amendment and the underlying bill, and I yield back.
Would the gentleman yield?
I yield.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate my friend from Michigan's amendment. In talking about Line 5, I think it's really important because this is a line that not only benefits Canada and Michigan, but also Ohio. And I think, as I remember when we were talking about Line 5 in the past, one of the things, if we did not have Line 5, it'd take about 2,200 truckloads a day to move that same product, which we don't have, and we know that the pipeline is safer. So I appreciate the gentleman's amendment, and I yield back to the gentleman.
Gentleman yields back.
I'd be glad to yield to my colleague from North Dakota, Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Walmart, for offering this amendment to my bill because preventing the president from undermining existing permits is essential for providing long-term regulatory certainty needed by energy infrastructure developers. This amendment provides clarity for projects that are already operating or approved under the presidential permit structure and complements the underlying text of the bill, and I appreciate the amendment.
I thank the gentleman, and unless anybody else wants it, I yield back.
I think Mr. Weber wants some.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last words.
We're going to hold that thought. I'm going to go to Mr. Cardenas first.
We'll strike the last word on the amendment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. Mr. Chairman, I speak in opposition to this amendment. This amendment is nothing more than an attempt to bring back a pipeline project whose very investors have declared completely dead for nearly 2 years now. Let's dispense with everything else and be clear. This amendment is a pro-Keystone XL pipeline amendment, but it's also worse than just that. This amendment would freeze in place any cross-border energy infrastructure that ever received a presidential permit over the last 50 years. The agencies would not have the authority to revoke or amend the permits. The president would not have the authority to revoke or amend the permits. Any project, no matter how mistaken, no matter how misguided, no matter how many issues had come up since its permit was issued, would be allowed to operate in perpetuity without agency review. This amendment represents a brazen handout to big oil and gas at the cost of American border communities across our country. It's a retroactive lottery ticket to any company that received a presidential permit over the last 50 years. And with that, I urge opposition to the amendment and I yield back. Okay, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, for what purposes Mr. Weber seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last words.
Gentleman's recognized.
I'm getting tired of hearing all the scare tactics. My colleagues on the other side that pipelines are going to actually be dangerous for communities because of all the oil spills. To quote, almost quote one of the comments up here today. Keystone Pipeline comes into my district. It carries 830,000 barrels of oil a day. Representative Latta had a great bill. He pointed out that we were 1 million barrels a day down in oil for refining. That one pipeline would cover 80% of the need. And all this rhetoric about pipelines are dangerous, look it up for yourself. Pipeline industry has a 99.99 something safety rating. You don't get that from the rail. You don't get that from trucking. It's the safest way to move product. It's about energy security. It's about national security. It's about economic security. It's about jobs for people and making sure that America remains foremost, the safest and most viable country in the world, especially if it ever comes to a war that we need energy for. So I would urge all of our colleagues to support this amendment. And I will yield to my friend from North Dakota.
Thank you. And while not speaking for anybody else on this side of the aisle, I think this is a perfect example of the different governing viewpoints. Probably understand onshore oil and gas industry as well as anybody in Congress. And I know full well we can't resurrect a pipeline. It's a northern border expansion of an existing pipeline that only one company can build. Republicans in Congress can't build it. Democrats in Congress can't build it. The government shouldn't build it. But this isn't the only project with our closest ally that is existing and wanting to be built. And the reality is, by dealing with this in something that takes 10 to 12 years to come to completion, it should be clear, too, there was nothing unique about the Keystone XL pipeline, other than it was probably the most vetted pipeline in the history of the country. The uniqueness to it is it's the only one the president could shut down with the stroke of a pen. The only one. And that's what happened. And that project is over, and that is up to a particular company if they choose to resurrect that, if the law and the policy exists in a place where they would like it to be. But there are a lot of different projects with our allies to the north. I border them for the entire northern border of my state. They're our closest ally. They're our best friend. It's old school Monroe Doctrine, and it takes us from using somebody who we have never been at war with, never been in a conflict with, as opposed to our strategic adversaries on the world stage. So as we talk about this and we continue to move forward, the next bill has something to do with the Keystone XL. This has to do with being able to create a relationship with our closest ally to the north. And anybody want to know why we don't want a public a need-determined project being determined by the administration? We can talk about the Keystone XL. Because on November 3rd of 2015, then Secretary of State John Kerry determined that the Keystone XL project was not in the public interest because there was a perception among foreigners that the project would increase greenhouse gases, and that it didn't matter whether that perception was actually accurate. In Secretary Kerry's opinion, the decision would undercut the credibility of influence of the United States. Never mind that the project actually didn't increase greenhouse gases. Never mind that Canadian drilling requirements meet or exceed our own federal requirements. Never mind that it prioritized relationships with our strategic adversaries as our closest ally and neighbor. That's why we can't have nice things. And that's why this bill is necessary, and that's why this bill is necessary for infrastructure projects now and in the future. And it actually doesn't resurrect the Keystone XL pipeline because Republicans understand that the government is never going to build that. And with that, I yield back.
Would the gentleman yield?
I would.
Appreciate that. It is about Line 5, though, which is a project still in place. And right now, the Canadian company has agreed to take the Line 5 and upgrade it by making a tunnel 200 feet under Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, the Mackinac Straits, a tunnel that will completely encapsulate Line 5, make it impossible to spill into the Great Lakes, and also make a way for communications, cables, et cetera, to go through that same tunnel and to be manned and cared for. So they want to improve it. But this president, our governor, and others want to end Line 5. It's wrong. This bill will encourage expansion of better pipelines, safer pipelines, and more security for our country. I yield back.
Gentlemen, time's expired. For what purposes, Ms. Fletcher, seek recognition?
I move to strike the last word.
General Lay is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to speak on the amendment and then briefly on the underlying bill as well, because on this amendment, I agree that the revocation of the pipeline permit for the Keystone Pipeline was not the right decision. I said that at the time. I shared that view with the administration. And the thing that I hear most from my constituents when it comes to these issues is that we need regulatory certainty. We need the ability to plan. We need to know when investing in multi-billion-dollar projects that take many, many years to construct. We need to be able to have a process and a system that works, that allows the planning to go on. And so I intend to support this amendment to the bill, and I think it's important to understand that. But I also am frustrated that we're doing this sort of this way because I think we need to tackle permitting reform more broadly. That is something else that I have been working on. I was disappointed we couldn't get it done in the last Congress, and certainly I think it's really important that we work together on both sides of the aisle. I think there's a lot of interest in permitting reform, and I know that I have raised the issue many times. I think many people on this side of the aisle would like to work with you on permitting reform and to make sure that we are doing that. So we can do, as what Mr. Armstrong said, streamline the process, create a process we can rely on for all forms of energy infrastructure. It's hugely important. On the underlying bill here, I agree with so many of the points that Mr. Armstrong made, and I'm not going to go back over all of them. But I do have some concerns about this bill, and in particular, as Mr. Armstrong just mentioned, the importance of having the input of the State Department, the geopolitics around energy production, the importance of the involvement of those with expertise about our national security. And what I see in this bill right now as it's written is really deferring those decisions, leaving out the Department of State, sending everything to the FERC, and I have some concerns about that. So I intend to vote no on the underlying bill at this time and would love the opportunity to work with Mr. Armstrong and others to address some of these concerns about the bill as it moves forward, because I really do think that it's important that we work in a bipartisan way on this committee on these issues, and if we can accomplish permitting reform in this Congress, it will be an incredible accomplishment that will help move our country forward on all forms of energy. I think that's something we all should agree on, and hopefully we can accomplish in our committee. So with that, I yield back. Thank you.
Will the gentlelady yield?
Sure, I'll yield to Mr. Pfluger.
Thank you for mentioning regulatory certainty. I couldn't agree with you more. It's been said in this hearing that big oil, and I'm still trying to figure out who that is because I know individuals who are not, in big companies that are doing this, but it's been mentioned that big oil was gouging the American public. Regulatory certainty is the number one reason that this industry is unable to reinvest, recapitalize, put more back into the system. And I think this particular bill by Mr. Armstrong and the amendment actually highlight that very well. And I couldn't agree with you more. I'd love to work with you on permitting reform because when we talk about lowering the price, increasing the supply, making affordable, reliable energy actually come back into the system, it does revolve around the certainty. It's actually the lack of certainty. The only certainty we have right now is that this administration is against the industry. That's the only certainty that our industry knows. And so therefore, every CEO that I talk to, every small business that is associated with the service, with the midstream and the E&P or down to the refineries where your district is, they are 100% certain that the administration is against them. So I think this bill highlights a very important factor and hopefully leads us into permitting reform, which is exactly where we need to go. I'll yield back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Pfluger, and I just want to respond. Once again, I agree to several of the things you said, but not everything. I don't think the administration is against the industry, and I don't think that Democrats are against the industry. I think we have different policy views sometimes on how to get things done, but I know for a fact that the members of the White House have met with people in my district who are in the industry, who are asking questions about how we can deal with refining issues, how we can deal with capacity issues, how we can try to work together. Certainly, there have been a lot of things said that I don't agree with, and I try to call those out every time. I represent a lot of people who work very hard in this industry, but I think we all want to see reliable energy, and we want to see an all of the above approach, and we want to invest in all kinds of technologies. That's what the administration's doing. That's what we did in the legislation we passed in the last Congress, and I think it's really important for all of us to work together and not politicize this issue, but work to bring energy to the American people. And with that, I've exceeded my time, and I will yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman yields back. Any other member seeking recognition? I recognize myself. I move to strike the last word and speak in favor of the amendment. I appreciate the gentlelady's comments. I look forward to working with you on permitting reform. I think there's a lot of opportunity for bipartisan work in this Congress. I want to see that happen in this subcommittee to move some bills like permitting reform. Before I came to this committee, I chaired the Western Hemisphere Subcommittee on foreign affairs. I've been working on energy for a long time. And under the Obama administration, Secretary Clinton actually negotiated the Transboundary Hydrocarbon Agreement with Mexico to start developing the resources in the Gulf of Mexico under the maritime boundary between the United States and Mexico. Shared resources that were going to be developed for energy production, working with our neighbors to the south. As chair of Western Hemisphere, I talked a lot about these type things, working with our neighbors to the north and to the south on energy issues. It's interesting that when we talk about pipelines, we also need to talk about transmission lines that go across the northern border, provide electricity both north and south. North Dakota and Saskatchewan are working on a carbon sequestration and carbon pipeline to take carbon from North Dakota into Saskatchewan for carbon capture. Those are also cross-border infrastructure projects. I think there's a lot of opportunity to work under this piece of legislation with our neighbors to the north and south, whether that's Mexican resources coming to Texas to be refined, or whether that's from the Eagle Ford going into Mexico, natural gas primarily, from Texas going to Mexico. Shared resources being developed, U.S. resources, Mexican resources, Canadian resources flowing north and south, helping North American energy independence be achieved, but also addressing climate with carbon projects, as I mentioned earlier, North Dakota and Saskatchewan. I hope to lead a code out of Saskatchewan to meet with Premier Moe, talk about these projects that are going on, binational projects. So I support this amendment, and if no other members seek recognition, I'll yield back my time and call for the vote. The underlying question is on the amendment offered by Mr. Wahlberg, and those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it in the opinion of the chair, and Mr. Gett calls for a recorded vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Rep. Burgess. Rep. Burgess votes aye. Rep. Latta. Rep. Latta votes aye. Rep. Guthrie. Rep. Griffith. Rep. Johnson. Rep. Griffith votes aye. Rep. Johnson. Rep. Johnson votes aye. Rep. Bouchon. Rep. Bouchon votes aye. Rep. Wahlberg. Rep. Wahlberg votes aye. Rep. Palmer. Rep. Palmer votes aye. Rep. Curtis. Rep. Lesko. Rep. Lesko votes aye. Rep. Pence. Rep. Armstrong. Rep. Pence votes aye. Rep. Armstrong. Rep. Armstrong votes aye. Rep. Weber. Rep. Weber votes aye. Rep. Balderson. Rep. Balderson votes aye. Rep. Pfluger. Rep. Pfluger votes aye. Rep. Rogers. Rep. Rogers votes aye. Rep. Duncan. Rep. Duncan votes aye. Rep. DeGette. Rep. DeGette votes no. Rep. Peters. Rep. Fletcher.
Aye.
Rep. Fletcher votes aye. Rep. Matsui.
No.
Rep. Matsui votes no. Rep. Tonko.
No.
Rep. Tonko votes no. Rep. Vesey. Rep. Custer. No. Rep. Custer votes no. Rep. Schreier. Rep. Schreier votes no. Rep. Castor. Rep. Castor votes no. Rep. Sarbanes. Rep. Cardenas. Rep. Cardenas votes no. Rep. Blunt Rochester. Rep. Pallone.
No.
Rep. Pallone votes no.
Any other members not recorded? How's Mr. Guthrie reported?
Mr. Guthrie is not recorded. Mr. Guthrie votes aye.
How's Mr. Peters recorded?
Mr. Peters is not recorded.
No.
Mr. Peters votes no.
Any other members not recorded? Clerk will report the totals.
Chair Duncan, on that vote, we have 17 ayes and 9 noes.
The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. For what purpose, Mr. Gett? seek recognition.
Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk number SC02.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Ms. Daggett, page 2, line 25, strike unless and insert if, page 3, line 2,
Ask
strike
unanimous
not.
consent to consider the amendment as read.
Clerk will dispense with the reading, and Ms. DeGette's recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, as written, H.R. 1058 creates a presumption that any cross-border pipeline or transmission line is in the national interest. This bill requires that 120 days after the completion and publication of a project's environmental review, FERC or the Department of Energy grant a certification of crossing to a project developer unless the facility is not in the public interest. So this effectively creates a presumption that FERC and DOE must grant certificates unless they find the facility's not in the public interest. And so what that does, it establishes a ticking clock for them to make that decision and provide the evidence supporting the decision. So what this amendment does, it simply flips the presumption. Under the amendment, the 120-day clock would remain, but FERC or DOE would only grant a public certification if they found the project was in the public interest. This seems to make a lot of sense to me. It's the same way that we treat LNG exports. The agency affirmatively finds that the export is within the public interest. And I think that that determination has served us well, and so I oppose the efforts to remove it. The bill, I think, asks far too much of FERC and DOE because it asks them to become arbiters of international affairs in an inappropriate way that's way outside of their purview. And so, as written, if the agencies are not sure if a pipeline or transmission line would be in the national interest, it wouldn't matter. It would be built anyway. So from an economic security perspective, that's not tenable. And from a national security perspective, I think it's downright irresponsible. And so I would urge support of this amendment. I think it's common sense, and I would yield back.
Does any other member seek recognition? Mr. Armstrong is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to speak in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman's recognized.
I'll start with a question, and that is there some really secret underlying Cold War with Canada that I am unaware of? Our North American allies are significant energy trading partners. We share roughly 40 transmission interconnections with Canada, as well as a few interconnections with Mexico. We also share significant amounts of oil and gas pipeline on our northern and southern borders. This amendment would change the criteria on which a border crossing facility certificate can be issued, requiring a positive public interest determination to be found before issuing the certificate. The current text requires a negative finding to be made in order for a certificate not to be issued. Under current law, LNG exports are automatically deemed in the public interest if the export is to a country with which we have a free trade agreement. Any export of oil, gas, or electricity to our Northern American allies should have the same criteria and be deemed in the public interest. I urge a no vote on this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Anyone else seek recognition to speak on the amendment? Seeing none, recorded vote has been requested, so we'll just go straight to that. Clerk will call the roll.
Rep. Burgess. Rep. Burgess votes no. Rep. Latta. Rep. Latta votes no. Rep. Guthrie. Rep. Guthrie votes no. Rep. Griffith. Rep. Griffith votes no. Rep. Johnson. Rep. Johnson votes no. Rep. Bouchon. Rep. Bouchon votes no. Rep. Wahlberg. Rep. Wahlberg votes no. Rep. Palmer. Rep. Palmer votes no. Rep. Curtis. Rep. Lesko. Rep. Lesko votes no. Rep. Pence. No. Rep. Pence votes no. Rep. Armstrong. Rep. Armstrong votes no. Rep. Weber. Rep. Weber votes no. Rep. Balderson. Rep. Balderson votes no. Rep. Pfluger. Rep. Pfluger votes no. Rep. Rogers. Rep. Rogers votes no. Rep. Duncan. Rep. Duncan votes no. Rep. Daggett. Rep. Daggett votes aye. Rep. Peters. Rep. Peters votes aye. Rep. Fletcher. Aye. Rep. Fletcher votes aye. Rep. Matsui. Aye. Rep. Matsui votes aye. Rep. Tonko.
Aye.
Rep. Tonko votes aye. Rep. Vesey. Rep. Custer. Rep. Custer votes aye. Rep. Schreier. Rep. Schreier votes aye. Rep. Castor. Rep. Castor votes aye. Rep. Sarbanes. Rep. Cardenas. Rep. Cardenas votes aye. Rep. Blunt Rochester. Rep. Pallone. Rep. Pallone votes aye.
Any member not recorded? Clerk will report the total.
Chair Duncan, on that vote, we have 10 ayes and 16 noes.
The noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. Any further discussion on the bill as amended? Hearing none, the underlying question is passage of the bill as amended, and that is H.R. 1058. Recorded vote has been requested. Clerk will call the roll.
Rep. Burgess. Rep. Burgess votes aye. Rep. Latta. Rep. Latta votes aye. Rep. Guthrie. Rep. Guthrie votes aye. Rep. Griffith. Rep. Griffith votes aye. Rep. Johnson. Rep. Johnson votes aye. Rep. Bouchon. Rep. Bouchon votes aye. Rep. Wahlberg. Rep. Wahlberg votes aye. Rep. Palmer. Rep. Palmer votes aye. Rep. Curtis. Rep. Curtis votes aye. Rep. Lesko. Rep. Lesko votes aye. Rep. Pence. Rep. Pence votes aye. Rep. Armstrong. Rep. Armstrong votes aye. Rep. Weber. Rep. Weber votes aye. Rep. Balderson. Rep. Balderson votes aye. Rep. Pfluger. Rep. Pfluger votes aye. Rep. Rogers. Rep. Rogers votes aye. Rep. Duncan. Rep. Duncan votes aye. Rep. DeGette. Rep. DeGette votes no. Rep. Peters. Rep. Peters votes no. Rep. Fletcher.
No.
Rep. Fletcher votes no. Rep. Matsui.
No.
Rep. Matsui votes no. Rep. Tonko.
No.
Rep. Tonko votes no. Rep. Vesey. Rep. Custer. Rep. Custer votes no. Rep. Schreier. Rep. Schreier votes no. Rep. Castor. Rep. Castor votes no. Rep. Sarbanes. Rep. Cardenas. Rep. Cardenas votes no. Rep. Blunt Rochester. Rep. Pallone. Rep. Pallone votes no.
Is any member not recorded? Seeing none, the clerk will report the total.
Chair Duncan, on that vote, we have 17 ayes and 10 noes.
The ayes have it, and the bill as amended will be reported to the full committee. Clerk will now, the chair will call up H.Con. Resolution 14. Ask clerk to report.
H.Con.Res 14, a concurrent resolution expressing disapproval of the revocation by President Biden of the presidential permit for the Keystone XL pipeline.
Without objection, the first reading of the resolution is dispensed with. Resolution will be open for amendment at any point. Any bipartisan amendments to be offered? Any further discussion on the bill? Chair will recognize Ms. Lesko to describe the amendment. Bill, rather.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm proud to co-sponsor House Concurrent Resolution 14, expressing disapproval of the revocation by President Biden of the presidential permit for the Keystone XL pipeline. On September 16, 2019, President Biden said, and I quote, "I want you to look at my eyes. I guarantee you, we're going to end fossil fuels." And canceling the Keystone XL pipeline was just Biden's first step. This is a simple resolution, and I hope my colleagues on both sides of the aisle will support it. The Keystone XL pipeline was once a bipartisan issue that at least one of our Democratic colleagues on this committee supported. It is important as members of this committee to periodically express our disapproval when the President makes unwise unilateral decisions that affect millions of Americans and cost the U.S. Treasury billions of dollars. This is such a time to do so. On Biden's first day in office, he canceled the Keystone XL pipeline permit, and with it, the 830,000 barrels per day of oil that would have flowed through it from Canada to U.S. refineries. President Biden's actions were wrong in 5 ways. Canceling the Keystone pipeline did not actually stop the drilling or exporting of the Canadian oil sands as the extreme environmentalists thought. The 830,000 barrels per day of crude oil from Alberta, Canada, set a record for exports in 2022. The cancellation of the pipeline also did little to stop emissions. Oil is now transported by rails and trucks, which have higher emissions than a pipeline. Number 2, President Biden insulted our best ally, Canada. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney said, sadly, it is an insult directed at the United States' most important ally. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau echoed this same disappointment. Number 3, the developer TC Energy, a Canadian company, is now suing the U.S. under provisions of the Free Trade Agreement, and they will likely recover over $8 billion in damages. Number 4, the local communities where the pipeline was to be located will continue to lose millions in lost tax revenues. Number 5, finally, the ultimate cost of this reckless executive order is now reported to be as much as 59,000 jobs and up to $9.6 billion that would have helped our economy thrive. It is asked in previous comments by my Democratic colleagues, why are we bringing this up? This is the first time that this committee has had the opportunity to voice our opinion on this disastrous decision. The previous Congress largely ignored this issue. The previous Congress largely ignored this whole decision. As a matter of fact, by this committee's silence on the issue, it has endorsed President Biden's all-of-the-government approach to eliminate fossil fuels. This energy policy has been a big cause of our record-high inflation, which has harmed all Americans. It's about time our constituents know how we feel. Canceling the pipeline was a reckless, out-of-touch decision, and it must be addressed. I hope all of you will vote in favor of this resolution, and I yield back.
Any other members seeking recognition? What purpose does the ranking member to get?
Seek recognition to oppose the concurrent resolution.
John Lay's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, we already had Groundhog Day. It was last month, but I feel like we're having it again because here we are talking about the Keystone XL pipeline, which we talked about a lot in this committee over the years. Irrespective of what your position on the Keystone XL pipeline was, irrespective of what your views on what President Biden said were, the fact is TransCanada has now declared it would stop pursuing the project and the pipeline is effectively dead. But this is what I've been saying since my opening statement about these resolutions and bills today. They're not actually trying to solve the energy issue in this country. They're just about people emoting about how they feel about the past. I heard my colleagues talking about things that John Kerry said 8 years ago. Now we're hearing about the Keystone XL pipeline. And in fact, this isn't even a bill that would do something. It's a resolution condemning something that happened 2 years ago. So Keystone XL would not have done anything to alleviate the costs and impacts of climate change, wouldn't have done anything to alleviate the high prices at the pump that American consumers faced the last year. It wouldn't have done anything to address the fact that oil companies are embarking on massive dividends and stock buybacks. It was really an idea. I know we debated it a long time, but it wouldn't have solved any of these problems. And so what I think we should do is stop rehashing all of the things we debated for many, many years and doing, frankly, resolutions that aren't going to lead to anything. And we should sit down together and try to figure out how we're going to solve these problems. I believe that we can, and I look forward to doing that as we move forward after today. And so I urge all members who actually care about making substantive legislation on energy issues to oppose resolutions that don't do anything except for give people's opinions, and I yield back.
Any other member seeking recognition? Gentleman from Alabama, what purpose do you seek recognition?
I want to speak in favor and
Gentleman is recognized.
move to strike the last word. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I sit here and I'm just amazed at what I hear. Obviously, there are some folks that don't understand supply and demand, but 835,000 barrels of Canadian oil coming into the marketplace in the United States would have lowered energy cost. Mr. Chairman, there's 20 million households that are behind on their household utility bills because of the policies of this administration, particularly in respect to natural gas. And while we're doing things like this, Russia and China collaborated to build a pipeline that's supplying 1.3 trillion cubic feet of natural gas per year to China. That pipeline is 1,875 miles long, okay? So we're letting our hydrocarbon infrastructure go into decline. We're increasing prices for people at the pump, but particularly in terms of household utilities. And a nation whose energy production is in decline is not a nation that can have a very bright economic future. So I support this bill, and these other bills that we're bringing up because it is in the essential best interest of every American, in the essential best interest of our economic security, in the essential best interest of our national security. I yield back.
Will the gentleman yield to Mr. Pfluger?
Be happy to yield.
Thank you. Why is it important to rehash this? Because our constituents are asking for it, because the American people are asking for it. At a very micro level, we're rehashing this because prices on everything have gone up, because thousands of families are no longer employed in a project that they were promised employment on. This is very similar to 1058, the cross-border energy infrastructure bill that we just discussed. And the reason that TransCanada is stopping construction or saying they're not going to pursue it is because it was expropriated. This was expropriated from them. It's basically the exact same thing as a third world country policy where you don't have the environment, the investment certainty. In effect, President Biden has said no to North American dominance. He has said no to thousands of workers in the United States, to our ability to counter OPEC from Canada through the United States and into Mexico, for a North American organization, if you want to call it that, to counter China. The president has literally thrown away the resources that we have right here in favor of outsourcing our jobs, in favor of dirtier sources of energy, in favor of slave labor and human rights violations in places like China. That's why we're rehashing this. That's why this is important to have, this discussion right here. Because if we don't do it, not only do we lose jobs and have higher costs for energy, but we also give that source of geopolitical power to our adversaries. I couldn't agree more with what Ms. Lesko is doing here, in addition to the efforts of all the bills here that are important to rehash because our policy has gone so wrong for the last 2 years. With that, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I learned through my own life experiences and observing things in history that smart people learn from the mistakes. They don't double down on them. And that's what it appears that some people want to do, is double down on the mistakes that we're making. And I really do believe that it has become an existential threat to our national security to continue this. I mean, particularly this false argument that we're dependent on any other country, much less the Middle East, for our energy supplies, it's a complete false narrative. What we would do, though, is become completely dependent on China for a renewable power grid. That would be an enormous mistake. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Any further discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, a roll call vote has been requested, so the clerk will call the roll.
Rep. Burgess. Rep. Latta. Rep. Latta votes aye. Rep. Guthrie. Rep. Griffith. Rep. Johnson. Rep. Johnson votes aye. Rep. Bouchon. Rep. Bouchon votes aye. Rep. Wahlberg. Rep. Wahlberg votes aye. Rep. Palmer. Rep. Palmer votes aye. Rep. Curtis. Rep. Curtis votes aye. Rep. Lesko. Rep. Lesko votes aye. Rep. Pence. Rep. Pence votes aye. Rep. Armstrong. Rep. Weber. Rep. Weber votes aye. Rep. Balderson. Rep. Balderson votes aye. Rep. Pfluger. Rep. Pfluger votes aye. Rep. Rogers. Rep. Rogers votes aye. Rep. Duncan. Rep. Duncan votes aye. Rep. DeGette. Rep. DeGette votes no. Rep. Peters. Rep. Peters votes no. Rep. Fletcher.
No.
Rep. Fletcher votes no. Rep. Matsui.
No.
Rep. Matsui votes no. Rep. Tonko.
No.
Rep. Tonko votes no. Rep. Vesey. Rep. Custer. Rep. Custer votes no. Rep. Schreier. Rep. Schreier votes no. Rep. Castor. Rep. Castor votes no. Rep. Sarbanes. Rep. Cardenas. Rep. Cardenas votes no. Rep. Blunt Rochester. Rep. Blunt Rochester votes no. Rep. Pallone. Rep. Pallone votes no.
Any member unrecorded? Mr. Guthrie.
Mr. Guthrie votes aye.
How's Mr. Armstrong recorded?
Mr. Armstrong is not recorded. Mr. Armstrong votes aye.
Any other member unrecorded? Clerk will report the total.
Chair Duncan, on that vote, we have 15 ayes and 11 noes.
Ayes have it, and the resolution is agreed to. Chair will now call up H.Con. Resolution 17. Ask clerk to report.
H.Con.Res 17, a concurrent resolution expressing the sense of Congress that the federal government should not impose any restrictions on the export of crude oil or other petroleum products.
Without objection, the first reading of the resolution is dispensed with, and the resolution will be open for amendment at any point. Chair will now recognize Mr. Guthrie, the author of the resolution, to explain what it does.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the committee for including my bill in this markup today. This resolution affirms Congress's bipartisan vote in 2015 to repeal the decades-long export ban on crude oil and petroleum products. Additionally, it says that the federal government should not impose overly restrictive regulations on the exploration, production, or marketing of energy resources, or restrictions on the export of crude oil and petroleum products. When Congress lifted the export ban, the American oil and gas industry was invigorated. Investments in domestic energy production increased, creating new American jobs and unleashing economic development. As a result of this investment, the United States emerged as the leading producer in the world, and in 2019 became a net exporter of petroleum products for the first time since 1952. President Biden and some of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have floated reinstating the export ban as a way to increase domestic supply and decrease prices at the pump. Reinstating the export ban will likely have the opposite effect. By shrinking the market available to American crude oil and other petroleum products, American oil and gas companies will likely reduce domestic investments. This ultimately risks higher prices at the pump and higher home heating bills. It also jeopardizes our national security. American oil and gas exports make us and our allies less dependent on energy from dictators. We're seeing this play out now in Europe. For years, Russia has been able to leverage its energy sector over other countries, including our NATO allies and other European partners. Russian oil and gas sector has in large part funded Russia's illegal and unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. However, since the invasion, U.S. LNG exports have helped our European allies replace Russian energy imports, helping keep the lights on and homes heated across Europe, while also cutting off resources for Putin's war machine in Ukraine. If we reverse course and reinstate the export ban without their own domestic alternatives, our European partners will once again be at the mercy of foreign dictators like Putin, undermining their national security and ours. Putin would only benefit of a ban on American exports, while American consumers would suffer. The Biden administration's anti-fossil fuel agenda is to blame for high energy prices. In order to increase supply and alleviate high prices for Americans, we should be supporting policies that unleash American energy. I had a chance just recently to meet with some high-ranking European colleagues, and these aren't from the right of center parties. These are from most of the governing parties in part of Europe, and their mission to us as we left was produce more gas. That's what they need to survive. And in order to, Germany right now, I think is 3 times the price of energy that it is, 3 to 4 times as it is here. And they say they need that to move forward. And I said survive. That's not correct. They need it in order to continually offset what they're doing and funding Putin's war on Ukraine. So I urge my colleagues to support my resolution, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Any other members seeking recognition on the resolution? Seeing none, I'll recognize myself. Move to strike the last word and speak in support of the resolution. In 2015, Congress passed a bipartisan bill to repeal the 1970s era restrictions on the export of crude oil. The bill was signed into law by President Obama. Since then, we've seen the benefits of free trade and open markets in the energy sector. Economic benefits, energy security benefits, flexibility on the global stage, America actually competing with some of our adversaries. Before the Biden administration took office, the United States was the world's leading energy producer and a net exporter of energy. As a direct result of Congress and President Obama lifting the crude oil export ban, OPEC, China, and Russia's power over the world oil markets had been diminished. We should not be in the business of putting restrictions on certain commodities. We should continue to uphold the commitment to free trade, open markets, in order to provide domestic economic benefits, enhance energy security, flexibility in the foreign diplomacy, as was intended by the bipartisan bill in 2015. So I support Mr. Guthrie's resolution, urge my colleagues to do so, and with that, I yield back. Any further discussion on the resolution? Ms. Castro, Florida is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, members, I think this goes way too far, and we need to rethink this. I hope that we're all concerned with China's growing ties with the Kremlin. Right now, the leader of Belarus, who is a proxy for Vladimir Putin, is meeting with the dictator from China. They are considering restocking Russia as the ammunition dwindles and their stocks of weapons dwindle. Think about the broader context here on what is being supplied to the authoritarian CCP. This would allow additional carte blanche exports to China and our adversaries. That is the wrong way to go at this point in time. Right now, there are U.S. companies, oil and gas companies, that have enriched themselves while also enriching the CCP strategic intentions. They are inking deals right now of American-produced oil and gas. And I think it's wrong for us to go on record and say, yeah, let's make it easier for dictators and adversaries to make deals with American big oil and gas companies. So I would just caution you to go back to the drawing board on this. I can't support it, and I hope you all will vote no as well. And at this point, I'll yield back my time.
Gentlelady yields back. Any further discussion? Oh, Ms. Fletcher is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to be very clear that I support energy exports. That's something we do out of my district and our region, in the Houston region. Not only do we refine a lot of the products we're talking about today, but we export them to the world. And I think it's critically important that we continue to do that. And I think that the 2015 legislation to remove the export ban was the right legislation, as you all have pointed out, signed into law by President Obama. I think there's bipartisan support for these exports. I certainly have heard the concerns and discussion over the last year or so that some people have suggested reinstituting an export ban, and I do not support that. I do not think that that is the right thing. I'm having a little trouble, though, kind of reconciling this bill with the bill that was on the floor of the House just a couple weeks ago, prohibiting exports from the SPR to China and the sale of those to China. I think that what I see here is that this isn't really necessary, this resolution, and it's too broad. It's, it's sort of big. It says we can't have any regulations on this at all, and I think that that undermines what we've been talking about, which is energy security and our energy policy is a really important foreign policy issue and tool, and this is our national security. And so I think that the breadth of this resolution unnecessarily ties our hands in a way that we don't need to, and that we shouldn't. But I absolutely don't think that we should be banning exports right now, and I don't think that there's a serious conversation about doing that. I would not support that. But like I said, I think that we just don't need to do this resolution at this time. I think it's overly broad, and I think rather than speaking on the next bill, I'll say I think it, there are similar concerns about removing DOE approvals. We have a system in place to take into account the national security issues and the moment that we're living in. And actually, I think when we look ahead at kind of the process we have on LNG, I think that's what we should be doing more broadly rather than repealing that as well. So I can talk on that when that comes up, but ultimately I'm going to vote no on this bill and on this resolution, and I urge my colleagues to do the same. I think it's overly broad and unnecessary.
The gentlelady yield?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. I think the difference in this resolution and the bill you mentioned that was on the floor dealing with the SPR is we're talking about open and free markets and the sale of a commodity versus a strategic asset that the United States stores to be used when we have a time of emergency. And with the Biden administration releasing oil from the SPR and allowing adversaries to buy it to replenish their strategic petroleum reserves, that's where the difference is. Free market, commodity produced in America, sold, versus a strategic asset. I think that's the biggest difference, and I just wanted to point that out. And I appreciate the lady yielding.
Well, thank you, and I just want to note, I certainly understand that difference, but once we sell oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which we have done many times, including as authorized by this committee, for things unrelated to lowering the price of gas, like when we used it to fund the 20th Century Cures Act, the 21st Century Cures Act, I think it's important to recognize that that oil is just sold onto the open market, and it can then be sold beyond that. And so really, it's sort of a distinction in this moment without a difference. If we're talking about free markets, then we're talking about putting things into this market. If what we're talking about is understanding the national security implications of our partners, then it makes sense to allow for consideration of that in terms of our policy and not limit our ability to execute our foreign policy and other policy objectives in this way. So like I said, I think it's overly broad. I appreciate your distinction, but I still don't think that I can support this resolution, and I yield back.
Yep, the gentlelady yields back. Any further discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, clerk will report the total. Roll call vote has been requested, and the clerk will call the roll.
Rep. Burgess. Rep. Latta. Rep. Latta votes aye. Rep. Guthrie. Rep. Guthrie votes aye. Rep. Griffith. Rep. Johnson. Rep. Johnson votes aye. Rep. Bouchon. Rep. Bouchon votes aye. Rep. Wahlberg. Rep. Wahlberg votes aye. Rep. Palmer. Rep. Curtis. Rep. Curtis votes aye. Rep. Lesko. Rep. Lesko votes aye. Rep. Pence. Rep. Pence votes aye. Rep. Armstrong. Rep. Armstrong votes aye. Rep. Weber. Rep. Weber votes aye. Rep. Balderson. Rep. Balderson votes aye. Rep. Pfluger. Rep. Pfluger votes aye. Rep. Rogers. Rep. Rogers votes aye. Rep. Duncan. Rep. Duncan votes aye. Rep. DeGette. Rep. DeGette votes no. Rep. Peters. Rep. Peters votes no. Rep. Fletcher.
No.
Rep. Fletcher votes no. Rep. Matsui.
No.
Rep. Matsui votes no. Rep. Tonko.
No.
Rep. Tonko votes no. Rep. Vesey. Rep. Custer. Rep. Custer votes no. Rep. Schreier. Rep. Schreier votes no. Rep. Castor. Rep. Castor votes no. Rep. Sarbanes. Rep. Cardenas. Rep. Cardenas votes no. Rep. Blunt Rochester. Rep. Pallone. Rep. Pallone votes no.
Any members not recorded? Clerk will report the total.
Chair Duncan, on that vote, we have 14 ayes and 10 noes.
The ayes have it, and the resolution is agreed to. The chair will now call up H.R. 1130 and ask clerk to report.
H.R. 1130, to repeal restrictions on the export and import of natural gas.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. The bill will be open for amendment at any point, and the chair will now recognize Mr. Johnson to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last word. Last month, I was encouraged when I saw our Energy Secretary at the White House podium being asked about LNG exports. She said, and I quote, "We know that our liquefied natural gas exports have been a significant help to our allies." And then she said, and I quote, "We're fortunate that we have an abundance, obviously, of natural gas in this country. Our prices are low." She's right. And this isn't even the first time that I've commended her on her support for LNG exports either, especially in regards to how we can use this strategic resource to help Europe get out from under the boot of Vladimir Putin. I'm certainly willing to give credit where credit is due. However, there's one problem. Just last April, and some of you remember this, our Energy Secretary Granholm was slated to appear and face questions before this subcommittee. And I kid you not, the night before that hearing, at quite literally the 11th hour, a press release went out from DOE. It was the approval of an LNG export authorization that had been sitting at the Department of Energy for 463 days. What a convenient thing. What convenient timing. Friends, colleagues, actions speak louder than words. And that's not the only one. In the last year, we have seen these permits languish at DOE for 146 days, 678 days, 762 days. I know everyone wants to talk permitting. To my colleagues, wouldn't this issue of the holdup at DOE be low-hanging fruit? The fact that major multi-billion-dollar FERC-approved, globally strategic American energy investments can be held up at the whim of political appointees, that's beyond unacceptable to me. My bill would fix this. And also, I do have an amendment that we'll discuss later to actually improve the legislation and prevent political interference from other agencies as well. With that, Mr. Chairman, allow me to take a minute to quickly respond to some of the critics of my legislation. America is the #1 global liquefied natural gas exporter right now. And our citizens will pay some of the lowest natural gas prices in the world. That's what's happening right now, and that's not changing. The fear-mongering about this legislation causing prices to skyrocket is unfounded, and it's not based in reality. Some opponents have even went so far as to falsely say that expanding LNG exports would cause shortages of natural gas in the United States. Friends, as a member with a district directly atop the Marcellus and Utica Shale, trust me, we have plenty, actually way more than enough. In fact, according to the latest estimates, the United States has well over a century's worth of natural gas supply. And according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, in the next few decades, domestic natural gas production is projected to increase twice as fast as domestic consumption, even factoring in increased LNG exports. If opponents of this legislation truly care about lowering natural gas prices or bills and natural gas-fired electricity bills for their constituents, they'd stop blaming LNG exports and look in the mirror. It's true that some Americans could use some relief on their energy bills, but this is mainly due to radical environmentalist policies at the national, state, and local levels that disproportionately hit citizens in certain geographic areas like New England and the East Coast, for example. Folks there frequently pay double or even triple the prices for natural gas than my constituents do in Ohio. Why? Because their left-wing leaders keep blocking new pipelines and enacting other wrong-headed energy policy decisions. So my message is simple. America has plenty of natural gas to go around. If you're worried about natural gas prices, build a pipeline to Ohio. We're happy to send you some. In the meantime, we'll keep doing what we're doing, from Texas to Pennsylvania to Ohio. America's resource-rich regions will keep producing abundant, affordable natural gas for our citizens and exporting clean American natural gas around the world. Let's build on this and make America the energy superpower of the 21st century. With that, I urge my colleagues to support my legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The chair recognizes the ranking member to get.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last word.
You're recognized.
Thanks. The first thing I want to do is I want to let my colleague from Ohio know, and I told him this on the floor last night, we're all so sorry about what has happened in his district and very supportive of you with all of that.
I thank the gentlelady for those comments.
Now, talking about the bill, what it does is it really takes out the common sense policies that were established under Section 3 of the Natural Gas Act by removing the requirement that exporters seek approval from the Department of Energy that the exports are in the public interest. So what that would do is it would transform the natural gas market into a volatile global market that mimics the oil market, which is something that does not ensure affordable energy here at home. It's kind of ironic that that would be the result of this bill. And frankly, any American who's getting tired of being gouged by the international oil market should be really concerned about this, because that's exactly what this bill would do. What it would do is it would remove the safeguards that prevent U.S. natural gas markets from being fully tied to international natural gas markets that are subject to the whims of the world's largest producers like Russia, Iran, and China. The requirement that exports be in the public interest serves the public. It serves all of us here today, and it serves our constituents back home. But it doesn't serve the interests of the big oil and gas companies, and that's why they're lobbying to remove the requirement. And furthermore, this bill doesn't just remove barriers to sending natural gas to our allies in Europe or in Japan, for example. It removes barriers to sending even more natural gas to China, which given the conversation that our colleague Ms. Fletcher was just having, I'm surprised anybody would support it. The bill is nothing more than a giveaway to the natural gas special interest. It doesn't protect us and bring down the cost of energy here at home, and it would do the opposite. And for that reason, I urge my colleagues to oppose the bill, and I yield back.
Thank you. The gentlewoman yields. Is there anyone else that wishes to be recognized?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Okay, let me first go to the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll try to be brief. I raised some of these issues in the context of the last bill, but I just want to raise a couple of issues here. I don't support this bill, while I do support the export of American LNG, and in fact, would love to talk more about that on this committee. I think that the system that we're talking about here, while perhaps I definitely hear some of the concerns about the time for these permit approvals, but I think what we need to remember is that these particular approvals apply only to exports to countries where we do not already have a free trade agreement. Those are automatically deemed in the national interest. So we're talking about facilities and permits relating to exports to countries where getting that input from the Department of Energy, I think, is still important. And in fact, this was the argument I made when we're talking about exports from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, that we should have a process like this and have DOE involved. It's something this committee took up years ago before I was here, but I think that that is actually what we should be doing. And what I think we can do is, rather than basically gut the provisions to do this review, we should look at expanding it. In the last Congress, I introduced a bill called the American Gas for Allies Act. We are working on a reintroduction of that bill, and I would love for this committee to take it up, that expands the provisions here that expedite the process for countries that we have a free trade agreement with to our allies and partners in Europe who we do not have free trade agreements with, but who are helping fight Russia's unprovoked and unconscionable brutal war in Ukraine. I think there are things that we can do that are smart to help get this gas onto the market where it is needed right now, but I don't support gutting all of the provisions as this bill does, and so I'm going to vote against this bill. Thank you. I'll yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to the bill? If not,
Mr. Chairman, I do have an amendment of the
is your amendment bipartisan?
I know it's amendment number 3.
We're just taking bipartisan amendments first, is the only reason I asked.
Oh, that's fine.
All right. Seeing none, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment makes 2 points of clarification. It's amendment number 3, by the way.
Would the chair like me to
Please,
report?
yes, thank you.
Amendment to H.R. 1130, offered by Rep. Johnson. Page 2, line 8, strike commission and insert Federal Energy Regulatory Commission.
Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes in support of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment makes 2 points of clarification which were identified as helpful by DOE, FERC, and other stakeholders that would benefit from this legislation and its goal to remove the regulatory burdens and barriers to LNG imports and exports. The amendment does 2 things. First, it makes clear that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, not DOE, will have the exclusive authority to make application decisions under the provisions of this bill. This preserves the current role of FERC and avoids confusion with DOE's authority under the DOE Organization Act. This means FERC will continue to approve or deny applications for the siting, construction, expansion, or operation of a facility to export or import natural gas pursuant to Section 3 of the Natural Gas Act. It will continue to lead on NEPA reviews. Second, the amendment adds the clarification that when FERC conducts its application reviews, it shall deem the exportation and importation of natural gas as consistent with the public interest. This provision clarifies that there will be no restrictions on the export of natural gas as a commodity, as it is in the public interest. The underlying purpose of this bill is to remove burdensome red tape on the exportation of natural gas. This follows the policy this committee advanced in H.R. 702 in 2015, which removed the Commerce Department fully from restricting crude oil exports to the benefit of the nation and the world, as we've since learned. So I urge my colleagues to support this amendment and continue the positive policies that we need to advance our goal of global leadership and provide affordable, clean energy here at home and abroad. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The gentleman yields. Is there further discussion on the amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, the gentleman from Texas is.
Move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think it's an important discussion here. What we're talking about is actually helping. I've heard on the other side of the aisle, even in today in this discussion, helping Ukraine, helping our allies, with those countries that we don't have a free trade agreement with. And I had an LNG Expansion Act bill last year, and this is very similar. This actually does help. It actually does move at the speed of relevancy, which the business world is moving at. And unfortunately, government is moving at an archaic pace. And so I hear from my colleagues that we want to be able to help. Well, this is a way we can help. Countries like Moldova, who are facing a dire shortage of LNG right now, today, and they have asked us for help, and yet we can't get out of our own way to approve it. This is not a big oil giveaway. I'm not sure how many more times we're going to hear that point today. I'm sure it's numerous. This is not only helping our own country, but it's helping our allies. So for those on the other side of the aisle, let's have the discussion. And actually, today is the time to have that discussion. Where are the amendments to help improve this from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle? Where are the amendments to help make these bills what you would want them to be? You just asked, Mr. Chairman, where are the bipartisan amendments to this? We agree with part of it, but not the others, but yet there's no amendments? I'm sorry. If you don't come to the markup with an amendment that makes it what you want, then we kind of get to the point where this is a good amendment. It helps our own industry here, and it helps our allies. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields. Seeing no further discussion, the vote occurs on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Are there any other amendments? Yes. Mr. Plone seeks to be recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk numbered SCD-02.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 1130, offered by Rep. Pallone.
Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed, and the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes in the support of his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment is straightforward. It simply says that the bill should not take effect until the Secretary of Energy certifies that increased LNG exports from the United States will not increase domestic natural gas prices. Many of my constituents use natural gas to heat their homes, and the high prices they've seen over the past 2 winters due to Putin's invasion of Ukraine have been difficult for families throughout New Jersey. When we had our joint subcommittee hearing 3 weeks ago, we heard from Mr. Tyson Slocum, who testified about how increased LNG exports tie U.S. natural gas prices to higher and more volatile international prices. According to the St. Louis Fed, European natural gas prices averaged just under $20 per unit in January, and that's roughly 6 times more expensive than natural gas prices here in the United States. So I'm worried, and my constituents are worried, that this bill would only serve to increase the price of natural gas in the United States. We're not the only ones. The industrial energy consumers of America also urged opposition to the bill on the grounds that excessive LNG exports can increase natural gas prices and volatility, leaving Americans on the hook while big oil and gas profits by selling LNG at inflated prices. LNG exports exploded by 2,000% from 2016 to 2022. U.S. natural gas prices increased by 155% over that same time frame. And when an explosion at the Freeport LNG export facility in Texas shut down the facility, domestic natural gas prices immediately fell by 10% because gas that was set to be exported from that facility was now going to stay in the United States market. And that was not a coincidence. So my point is, if my friends on the other side of the aisle dispute that the bill would result in higher natural gas prices, then they should be happy to vote for this amendment, as in that case, then the Secretary could make her certification on the day the bill would be enacted and it could go into effect. But as as I think we all know they do, LNG exports do increase domestic natural gas prices, then this amendment would be a vital safeguard to ensure that Americans are not ripped off by big oil and gas. And so I urge support of my amendment, and I yield back at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The gentleman yields. Is there discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
Does the gentleman wish to be recognized?
I strike the last word to speak in opposition to
Thank you.
this.
The gentleman is recognized.
LNG exports lower emissions, strengthen energy security, create jobs, and decrease energy prices here at home. The whole point of my legislation is to remove regulations on the exportation and importation of natural gas, to assure Americans can realize the benefits of increased production and supply. This amendment would do exactly the opposite, imposing a broad economic regulation on exports, which will add to uncertainty, curtail market signals essential for increased production, and lead to higher prices. Restricting LNG exports would mean higher prices at home for Americans. It reduces the amount in the global market, which puts an upward pressure on prices. As I said in my opening remarks on this legislation, the issue is not limited natural gas reserves in this country, because we have plenty, more than enough to go around. And also, I have to say, it's rich, coming from my colleagues in the minority, saying that they now are concerned about Americans suffering with high natural gas bills. I have a hard time believing the sincerity of this concern when, for years now, we've seen Democrats' entire legislative and regulatory agenda built upon rush to green initiatives that make this type of energy so expensive that people will stop using it. My friends and colleagues, we need to pursue policies to unleash American resources, to deliver clean, affordable, and reliable energy to Americans and project American geostrategic power abroad. We need more production to lower prices, not stifling regulations and continued restrictions. So I urge a no vote on this amendment and a yes vote on the underlying bill, and I yield back.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The United States began exporting liquefied natural gas from the U.S., lower 48 states, in February of 2016. Natural gas prices are naturally volatile. However, the average price between 1996 and March 2016 was $4.47. Since LNG exports began, the average price has been $3.52. If there was ever a normal period for LNG exports and prices, I would say it was from January 2017 to March of 2020, the time just before COVID kicked in and when LNG exports were quickly ramping up. During this period, prices averaged $2.82, and LNG exports roughly increased by a factor of 4. Biden's inauguration in January of 2021, prices were $2.71. LNG exports were around 11 billion cubic feet per day. Today, LNG exports are about 13 billion cubic feet per day, and today's spot price was $2.43. Prices are lower than when he was inaugurated, and shipments were 15% higher. So what I contend is that history shows us that increasing LNG exports does not increase the natural gas prices at home. I oppose the amendment.
The gentlewoman yields. If there's no further discussion, the vote occurs on the amendment, and all those in favor shall signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, aye. All those opposed? No. The nays have it.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask for the yeas and nays?
Yes. On that, a requested roll call vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Rep. Burgess. Rep. Latta. Rep. Latta votes no. Rep. Guthrie. Rep. Griffith. Rep. Johnson. Rep. Johnson votes no. Rep. Bouchon. Rep. Bouchon votes no. Rep. Wahlberg. Rep. Wahlberg votes no. Rep. Palmer. Rep. Palmer votes no. Rep. Curtis. Rep. Curtis votes no. Rep. Lesko. Rep. Lesko votes no. Rep. Pence. Rep. Pence votes no. Rep. Armstrong. Rep. Weber. Rep. Balderson. Rep. Balderson votes no. Rep. Pfluger. Rep. Pfluger votes no. Rep. Rogers. Rep. Rogers votes no. Rep. Duncan. Rep. Duncan votes no. Rep. DeGette. Rep. DeGette votes aye. Rep. Peters. Rep. Peters votes aye. Rep. Fletcher. Rep. Fletcher votes aye. Rep. Matsui. Rep. Matsui votes aye. Rep. Tonko.
Aye.
Rep. Tonko votes aye. Rep. VC. Rep. Custer. Rep. Schreier. Rep. Schreier votes aye. Rep. Castor. Rep. Sarbanes. Rep. Cardenas. Rep. Cardenas votes aye. Rep. Blunt Rochester. Rep. Blunt Rochester votes aye. Rep. Pallone. Rep. Pallone votes aye. Rep. Guthrie votes no. Rep. Griffith votes no. Rep. Armstrong. Rep. Armstrong votes no. Rep. Weber. Rep. Weber votes no.
Any other member not recorded? Clerk will report the total.
Chair Duncan, on that vote, we have 9 ayes and 16 noes.
The noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. So the pending question is forwarding H.R. 1130 to the full committee. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. And the ayes have it. Recorded vote has been requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Rep. Burgess. Rep. Latta. Rep. Latta votes aye. Rep. Guthrie. Rep. Guthrie votes aye. Rep. Griffith. Rep. Johnson. Rep. Johnson votes aye. Rep. Bouchon. Rep. Bouchon votes aye. Rep. Wahlberg. Rep. Wahlberg votes aye. Rep. Palmer. Rep. Curtis. Rep. Curtis votes aye. Rep. Lesko. Rep. Lesko votes aye. Rep. Pence. Rep. Pence votes aye. Rep. Armstrong. Rep. Armstrong votes aye. Rep. Weber. Rep. Balderson. Rep. Balderson votes aye. Rep. Pfluger. Rep. Pfluger votes aye. Rep. Rogers. Rep. Rogers votes aye. Rep. Duncan. Rep. Duncan votes aye. Rep. DeGette. Rep. DeGette votes no. Rep. Peters. Rep. Fletcher. Rep. Fletcher votes no. Rep. Matsui.
No.
Rep. Matsui votes no. Rep. Tonko.
No.
Rep. Tonko votes no. Rep. VC. Rep. Custer. Rep. Schreier. Rep. Schreier votes no. Rep. Castor. Rep. Sarbanes. Rep. Cardenas. Rep. Cardenas votes no. Rep. Blunt Rochester. Rep. Blunt Rochester votes no. Rep. Pallone. Rep. Pallone votes no.
Is any member not recorded? Mr. Griffin.
Rep. Griffith votes aye.
How's Mr. Palmer recorded?
Mr. Palmer is not recorded. Mr. Palmer votes aye.
How's Mr. Peters recorded?
Mr. Peters is not recorded. Mr. Peters votes no.
Any other member not recorded? How's Mr. Weber recorded?
Mr. Weber votes aye.
Any other members? Clerk will report the total.
Chair Duncan, on that vote, we have 16 ayes and 9 noes.
The ayes have it. The bill is agreed to and be sent to full committee. Chair will now call up H.R. 1115 and ask the clerk to report.
H.R. 1115, to provide for federal and state agency coordination in the approval of certain authorizations under the Natural Gas Act and for other purposes. Section 1.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. The bill will be open for amendment anytime so ordered. Any bipartisan amendments to be offered? Chair will recognize Mr. Balderson to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. H.R. 1115 would also establish a deadline of 90 days after FERC has completed a NEPA review for federal authorization of a project and requires FERC to notify Congress if that deadline will not be met. Excuse me. If passed, H.R. 1115 would guarantee accountability and transparency from FERC during a coordinated federal, state, and local NEPA review process to ensure growth and security for America's energy sector. I'm also offering an amendment to H.R. 1115. This amendment simply sets deadlines on FERC to identify, invite, and designate agencies it must cooperate with in the pipeline permit review process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? Mr. Cardenas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to strike the last word on H.R. 115.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I speak in opposition of H.R. 115, the Promoting Interagency Coordination for Review of Natural Gas Pipelines Act. There's a growing body of research that shows exposure to fossil fuel pollution is linked to negative health impacts. Time and time again, science has told us that oil, gas, and coal activity poison our air and water and contribute to the climate crisis. To protect the health of our communities and to combat climate change, we must be thoughtful and intentional about the legislation we consider. Not only does this bill fail to pivot to more sustainable energy model, but it cuts out the very communities that have borne the brunt of pollution. This is a deeply flawed bill and would approve without proper consideration the construction of new natural gas pipelines and undermine critically necessary environmental review processes. It undercuts public transparency and input from communities and codifies into statute deadlines to shut out every agency apart from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission from this process. When FERC testified in front of the subcommittee years ago on this bill, it laid out many of these concerns that have not been addressed in the last 6 years since. Not a word of this bill has changed since it passed the House in 2017, only to die in the Republican-controlled Senate. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle today may claim that they have gone through regular order, but regular order should not be a series of items on a list that can be mindlessly ticked off. It should be a process of good faith engagement on a bill, which has been lacking here in this case. This bill, amongst many others today, only shows us that our Republican colleagues are willing to push through poor policy and sacrifice the well-being of the American people so that big oil executives can reap more profits. Again, we know the impacts that reckless fossil fuel expansion has on our communities, especially those that have been historically left behind. We cannot be so reckless with the health and well-being of the American people. And we most certainly cannot be so reckless with the future of our children and grandchildren. If Republicans are serious about wanting to engage on ideas that can help build cleaner energy faster, I'd advise them to work with all of us on this committee. Until then, I urge opposition of this bill, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Any further discussion on the bill? Mr. Palmer from Alabama is recognized. For what purpose you seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I speak in support of the bill, and you know I'm going to keep pounding this point. Hydrocarbons are essential to human prosperity. We keep hearing this dogma or propaganda about how much damage has been done. I have, this is government data here that I mentioned earlier, that even though our economy's grown 142% since 1970, CO2 emissions have gone down 32%. Overall emissions of the 6 criteria gases that the EPA tracks have gone down 86%. I want to point out, though, how the hydrocarbon energy impacts whole countries. In the Human Index, Human Development Index, India moved from low to medium on that index. But let me tell you what that means. Because they began to build out their energy infrastructure, education increased by 2.2 times, and life expectancy increased by 11.8 years. China did the same thing. They moved from low to high in the Human Development Index, Mr. Chairman, and their life expectancy increased 7.8 years. Now, does that sound like hydrocarbon-based energy is destructive to the human condition? Does it sound like it's compromising human prosperity? We've got nearly 3 billion people worldwide that don't have access to adequate energy resources that we could meet with natural gas. There's 900 million people in sub-Saharan Africa that don't have access to electricity. They're cooking their food indoors with things like cow dung. But we want to deny them natural gas. I argued on this committee and previous committees for 2 or 3 years for the people in Pembroke Township in Illinois to get natural gas. It's a town of 2,100 people, 85% of whom are African American. They were heating their homes with propane and wood, cooking their food with propane. I'm happy to report through the efforts of Jesse Jackson and other key civil rights leaders that Pembroke Township now has a national gas pipeline. It's essential to human prosperity, to the improvement of the human condition. And I'm really astonished at the rhetoric that I continue to hear that makes it sound as though this is a horrible thing for the people of this country, especially when, as I reported earlier, there's 20 million people behind on their household utilities.
The gentleman yield?
Happily.
Thank you. You make some great points. There are so many people around the world who can't keep food fresh, who cook and heat their homes or their domiciles with wood, even animal dung. The air quality in those homes is pretty low. Through the export of American LNG, which we have an abundance of natural gas in this country, export of that to, as you pointed out, sub-Saharan Africa and other places around the globe, will definitely improve the quality of life for those people. We have an abundance to meet all of our energy needs here in America and the ability to export that. This bill is well thought out and is the right thing to do, and I appreciate the gentleman pointing that out. Now I yield back.
My last point on this is there's a village in India where Greenpeace went in, they got invested some money to build a microgrid, renewable grid for this little village called Darnai. And they supposedly would make this little village energy independent. They're now using those facilities for cattle sheds because, as we all know, these things don't last forever, and they couldn't afford to replace them. But even when they had it, Mr. Chairman, they didn't generate enough power, to your point, to run refrigerators or water pumps, things that are absolutely essential to the well-being of people. And as I pointed out earlier, we want to move people into the modern world, into a modern economy. And frankly, again, I'm just astonished at what I'm hearing from people in our attempts to try to maintain our economic security and our national security by strengthening our hydrocarbon power grid. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Weber's recognized.
I move to strike the last words. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In Alex Epstein's book, The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels, he actually lays out the fact, Mr. Palmer, that what we do provides people in less fortunate people in those underdeveloped countries with adequate energy that actually helps the women and the girls the most. because they spend so much of their time having to walk to the river or their source of water, the females do. They spend so much of their time cooking, having to go get food every day because they don't have refrigeration. In fact, he makes the case in his book that most of those households have the amount of electricity that is equal to one refrigerator a year, that is equal to the amount of energy it takes to run one of our refrigerators. So they are severely underdeveloped countries. They need fossil fuel to get out of the dark ages. We're trying to help, and I joined my colleague from Alabama in saying I don't understand why all the pushback on our ability to help those downtrodden people in those countries. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I want my colleagues hopefully to support this, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Any other further discussion? Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for the purpose of offering an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Can the member please specify the amendment?
It's amendment number 012.
Amendment to H.R. 1115, offered by Rep. Balderson. Page 3, beginning on line 23, strike as early as practicable after it is notified by a person applying for, and insert not later than 30 days after the commission receives an application for. Page 4, line 9, strike the and insert not later than 45 days after the commission receives an application for an authorization under Section 3 of the Natural Gas Act or a certificate of public convenience and necessity under Section 7 of such act the. Page 4, line 19, strike the and insert not later than 60 days after the commission receives an application for an authorization under Section 3.
Further reading of the amendments dispensed with. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment simply sets deadlines on FERC to identify, invite, and designate agencies it must cooperate with in the pipeline permit review process.
I thank the gentleman. Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the pending question is approval of the amendment, adoption of the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no? No. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. Now the pending question is adoption of the bill as amended. Yep. Mr. Tonko, for what purpose do you seek recognition?
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment at the desk. I believe it's numbered AMDT 02.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 1115, offered by Rep. Tonko. Beginning on page 5, strike line 10 and all that follows through page 6, line 8.
That objection, reading the amendment is dispensed with, and now we'll discuss the amendment. Mr. Tonko is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In my view, if we want to get energy infrastructure of any type built more quickly, it starts by having more consultation with impacted communities earlier in the process, not less. This gives everyone a fair chance to understand a potential project, its benefits and its drawbacks, and make an informed decision on whether or not and under which conditions to lend their support. This legislation broadly suffers from the misguided thinking, in my view, that limiting processes for community engagement and environmental review is the best way to get these projects built. So while I broadly have concerns with the bill, my amendment would narrowly focus on one paragraph that I hope members can agree is doing a disservice to our state, local, and tribal partners that have such an important role to play in project permitting. Subsection D of H.R. 1115 requires that FERC identify what the bill calls participating agencies, any federal or state agency, along with any local or tribal governments that have a say in pipeline authorizations through a specific community. However, subsection D4 of the bill then goes on to say that any agency not identified by FERC gets zero say in the environmental review process, even if it will play a major role in authorizing a pipeline and should be brought in from the beginning of the process. Under the bill, non-designated agencies cannot request that additional information be included in an environmental review. They are actually specifically forbidden from carrying out a supplemental environmental review. And perhaps most egregiously, FERC is prohibited from considering any of their comments on an environmental review and from even including those comments in the record. Surely we can all see how this opens up potential for abuse. Even the most well-intentioned bureaucracy may not correctly identify every single local, state, or tribal agency involved in pipeline approvals. The bill as written does not care if FERC makes a mistake. A non-designated agency is unable to have its comments and expertise included in FERC's process. This could also go downhill quickly if, for political reasons, agencies were purposefully left off the list of designated agencies. Then FERC would be free to ignore their comments and render its environmental review as it saw fit, potentially without feedback from the state, from the local or tribal agencies, with the most connection and information to the actual site in question. My amendment is simple. It would delete the part of the bill that puts restrictions on non-designated agencies. It does not impact FERC's ability to designate and coordinate with agencies it identifies. It just removes the prohibitions on agencies that are not designated. I think this is a common sense amendment that will ensure state, local, and tribal agencies are not left out of environmental review for permitting decisions that directly affect their communities. And with that, I urge my colleagues to adopt
Will the
this
gentleman
amendment.
yield?
Mr. Chair, I yield
Will
back.
the gentleman yield?
Yes, I will.
I thank the gentleman. I support the gentleman's amendment. And I also, I don't want to dwell on it, but I just want to say very briefly, with respect to this comment about women and girls in third world countries need fossil fuels for cooking, that, you know, study after study has shown that climate change vastly disproportionately impacts third world countries in negative ways. And it is true that women, girls, villages, everybody needs energy in third world countries. But the evidence is not clear. In fact, it's to the contrary, that they need fossil fuels, which will only exacerbate climate change. And so I would say this is part of what I think we should do, rather than just going through the old, tired talking points about energy policy. We should work together across the aisle to capitalize on American ingenuity, try to find energy sources that will work not just in the U.S., but around the world that we can export to help improve everybody's situation and not exacerbate climate change. And I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I yield back to him.
And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Any further discussion? Mr. Palmer's recognized.
And again, I just want to point out that the World Health Organization estimates that, that using indoor cooking, as they do in sub-Saharan Africa, having to cook indoors with wood or food debris or cow dung, was linked to nearly 500,000 premature deaths. I don't think that when you have that many people dying because they don't have access to reliable energy, that they'd be all that concerned about climate change. I don't think for them that's the existential threat. There's 900 million people in sub-Saharan Africa alone. That's 5 of 6 people that don't have access to reliable energy.
Would the gentleman yield?
Absolutely.
Would the gentleman speak to the role natural gas has played in bringing down carbon emissions worldwide and in the United States of America?
Happily. As I pointed out, that because of the United States conversion from coal-fired energy generation to natural gas, we have reduced CO2 emissions by 32%. But I want to go back to what it means to third world countries to get reliable power. When you look at India, with its population about to exceed that of China's and the condition of that country, and they've added over 11 years to life expectancy as they've increased their access to power. Access to reliable energy is foundational to human prosperity, to human health. And I don't think there's any way to dispute that.
Will the gentleman yield?
Absolutely.
Read an article recently about a much heralded project in India where a solar farm was created. And the whole village was going to be on renewable energy. In about a year's time, that system was non-functional. Money wasn't available to upgrade it. Batteries were failing. They switched back to coal-fired power plants. There's a lot of research and other things that need to go on in order to make renewables actually work for places that you mentioned, sub-Saharan Africa, India, and other places that if renewables can be part of it, I'm all for it. But we know what works. We know that natural gas can provide the needed power. And it can be transported and put in huge tanks for the small village to power their generators and refrigerators or whatnot to improve the quality of life of people around the globe. And the twist to it is we have an abundance of natural gas in this country, so much that is not even measurable, really. They try. We have enough gas to meet all of our energy needs here in America and export it to help others around the globe, the millions, hundreds of millions that you mentioned. We should be doing that. We should be doing that, producing that natural gas here and exporting it to help folks live better lives, healthier lives around the globe. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I associate myself with your comments, and it might be of some value at some point for this committee to take a congressional delegation trip to sub-Saharan Africa and some of these places, and perhaps let our colleagues across the aisle explain to them why they shouldn't have access to reliable energy. And then let them explain to us why, if we're not going to be in the business of providing it, they'll turn to the Communist Chinese to do it, because China is doing that. The Communist Chinese Party is investing in these energy infrastructure, and they're doing it through coal. So I think it would be a difficult argument to make to these 900 million people in sub-Saharan Africa who are having to cook indoors with things that pollute the indoor air and that are killing 500,000 people over the last 5 years. I think that number was since 2018.
Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
I think another aspect of this, because we are advocating for an all of the above, we believe that we need to unleash American energy. Natural gas, oil, hydro, nuclear, wind, solar, batteries. But I mentioned in my opening comments, China's the one that controls the green energy materials. You know, they've been termed the OPEC of green materials. You know, 70% of cobalt and lithium, 90% of rare earth minerals. We've also talked about the mines in Congo. I think we all need to recognize that some of the realities around any source of energy. And I yield back.
I will just add this before I yield. I realize my time's expired, but not one time have we said we're against renewables. No. Not one time. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. Any further discussion? Mr. Cardenas, California is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Assuming we're still on the amendment, I'd like to move to strike the last word on the amendment. I just want to state for the record, a lot of truths have been mentioned by some of my colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle, but what I do want to correct for the record is that a lot of examples of micro situations where certain communities or certain projects tried to go to renewable energy or what have you and found that renewable energy or processes on their own did not work out very well. I don't know the details of the projects, the ultimate details of the projects that were just mentioned, but there are failures in American history and world history on energy and many other examples where bad design or great intentions, but bad implementation has resulted in bad results. But what I do want to state for the record, and I would love for us to have the debate and even bring our military leaders before us, because even our military leaders are telling United States Congress, and they've said it more than once on the record, that the number one threat to peace on Earth is the climate change that is occurring, where more and more people across America and around the world are experiencing bad climate crises that are forcing people to migrate away from where they want to live and where they naturally live, and that is the biggest threat to world peace. And even our own military recognizes that they have to change their ways and be less dependent on fossil fuel, not 100% no longer dependent on fossil fuel, but less dependent on fossil fuel because of the adverse effects that the byproducts of fossil fuels causes on the world climate. So I would love to have that debate, but I just thought it was important for us to put into context that yes, on any given day, anybody in any committee in Congress or any conversation in some coffee house across America can point to some bad projects right here in America, projects anywhere in the world where bad design, bad implementation results in, aha, it didn't work. But let me tell you, even our own United States military says that the number one threat to our safety in our country and peace on the planet has to do with climate change.
Well,
and even they admit that they're having to clean up their act.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, I will.
Mr. Cardenas, I'm just going to have to push back just a little bit on that statement. I'm still serving in the military as a reserve colonel. I've never heard that. The number one threat coming from our military leaders is China. And we recently had a witness that sat here and said, air knows no boundaries. And yet just this week, China has already announced the continuation, in fact, the increase of their coal-fired plants. And to a previous point, if we're really concerned about the climate, then what we should be doing is exporting our own good air. Over the last 6 or 7 years, we have decreased those emissions, as was previously mentioned, for CO2, 32%, while we've increased LNG production tenfold on the export side. Additionally, methane, when you look at the decrease in the reduction of methane emissions, is 14%. So I want us to work together on energy and how we produce electricity and what we do, but I do not think that there's any military leader out there that is saying anything about the largest existential threat to our country from a military standpoint is climate change. I think that's false.
Thank you, Mr. Pfluger. I'm not going to argue that China is one of the biggest threats to our national security and to security on Earth, but it's not mutually exclusive. And yes, I would love for this committee or any committee of Congress to call the leaders of our military forward and ask them specific questions about China and or about climate change and what it is doing to the cause of migration of people around the planet. And as was mentioned earlier, some of the most, the people on the planet who are threatened the most by climate change and who need to find better solutions for their energy needs are in fact the poorest people on the planet. So I look forward to that opportunity for us to have that debate and that discussion with the folks that you've mentioned and I've mentioned as well. And thank you for your service.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair will recognize Mr. Griffith from Virginia for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think we're talking past each other. Is when we talk about climate change as the number one problem in the world and it's going to bring instability to the planet, it's like we can't use fossil fuels to affect a positive result on climate change. And it drives me crazy because we have roughly 300 million people in India that don't have reliable power. We have people in sub-Saharan Africa that don't have reliable power. They have dirty coal. They have coal they can mine. The Chinese are not only building plants, as Mr. Pfluger pointed out, in their own country, they're building them in sub-Saharan Africa to help those people. They're garnering goodwill all over the world using antiquated technology when we in this country not only have better technology, we're constantly working on better technology. Recently, I went to visit with some folks who are associated or part of Consol Energy. It was exciting because the methane leaking out of existing coal mines and abandoned coal mines can be captured by this new technology they have. And if we really are serious about solving the climate issues and reducing the amount of natural gas and CO2, methane that escapes and CO2 in the air, we should be using American technology to make the use of our fossil fuels better and better, and then we can export our technology, not antiquated technology from China using 1960s and 70s technology, but 21st century technology that the United States can produce and give or sell, whichever is the right way to do it, to countries in the world who are just trying to make sure that their folks have the power to heat their homes if they need them, to provide cooking abilities, to provide them with modern technologies, because they're all using these smartphones. We need to be providing that instead of it being provided by antiquated technology by the Chinese. And so it's not that we don't agree that we need to be looking at how we reduce greenhouse gases. It's that we ought not throw out the baby with the bathwater and say we can't use fossil fuels, that we can only use renewables. We need to be using all of the above. Where it's appropriate to use solar and wind, whether it be here or in the third world or somewhere else, that's fine. But where it's appropriate to use ways to clean up the dirty coal they already have. We have that technology available too. We're already selling some of that to India to try to help them with steel production. There are so many different things that we could be doing, and our companies are hamstrung. Their hands are tied so that they cannot do as much as they would like to do and invest in new investments which will help the world and help the U.S. economy. I appreciate your time, Mr. Chairman, and I will yield to somebody else or yield back to you, whichever is preferable. I yield to the gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last words. Regarding the comments about us.
Griffith's got the time. He was just yielding you the time. You got enough time?
Yeah. Regarding the comments from the other side of the aisle, that we on this side of the aisle are picking out isolated incidences of little tiny micro electrical systems and then saying they're failing. It's kind of interesting to me because I'm from Texas. 20% of our energy is wind energy. 5% solar panels. This last really hard winter, February 2 years ago, of course, we found out windmills ice up, solar panels ice up, they get clouded up, they have snow on them. And they failed not on a micro sense, but on a huge sense, because Texas has 85% of its state is in ERCOT, its own power grid. So the argument somehow that this is just simply a microgrid doesn't hold water. And I just want to make the point, Mr. Chairman, as has been said here, but I think it bears repeating in this format, and that is this. We want renewables. We're for renewables. But renewables cannot be the leading actor in this play. Renewables can be a supporting actor in this play, but we're going to need fossil fuels. The president thinks for another 10 years, bless his heart, he's on the right track. He's just about 100 years short. And I just want to say that this notion that somehow we're choosing isolated instances is just false on its face. We've experienced that first and foremost 2 years ago. We know what fossil fuels are. We know what renewables are. Renewables are good. This has been said for many, many years. We need all of the above.
Gentleman's time's expiring.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Clock was reset prematurely. We have about 15 minutes before votes are called on the floor. So does anyone else want to speak on the amendment? Mr. Balderson, quickly.
No, Mr. Chairman, I just want to move to strike the last word. This amendment would significantly alter FERC's ability to serve as the lead agency in the natural gas pipeline review process, which is the intent of this bill. And I would yield if Mr. Burgess, the author of the legislation, would like to speak. Go right ahead. I yield to you, Mr. Burgess.
Mr. Wahlberg wanted some time as well.
In the interest of time, I have nothing meaningful to add to this conversation. I think we should defeat the amendment, move on, go to the floor and vote, but I'll yield to Mr. Wahlberg.
In the essence of time, I will save my speech for another day.
I thank the gentleman. If there's not any further discussion on the amendment, the question is adoption of Mr. Tonko's amendment. And all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Recorded vote has been requested. Clerk will call the roll.
Rep. Burgess. Rep. Burgess votes no. Rep. Latta. Rep. Latta votes no. Rep. Guthrie. Rep. Griffith. Rep. Griffith votes no. Rep. Johnson. Rep. Bouchon. Rep. Wahlberg. Rep. Wahlberg votes no. Rep. Palmer. Rep. Palmer votes no. Rep. Curtis. Rep. Lesko. Rep. Lesko votes no. Rep. Pence. Rep. Armstrong. Rep. Armstrong votes no. Rep. Weber. Rep. Weber votes no. Rep. Balderson. Rep. Balderson votes no. Rep. Pfluger. Rep. Rogers. Rep. Rogers votes no. Rep. Duncan. Rep. Duncan votes no. Rep. DeGette. Rep. DeGette votes aye. Rep. Peters. Rep. Fletcher. Aye. Rep. Fletcher votes aye. Rep. Matsui. Aye. Rep. Matsui votes aye. Rep. Tonko.
Aye.
Rep. Tonko votes aye. Rep. Vesey. Rep. Custer. Rep. Schreier. Rep. Schreier votes aye. Rep. Castor. Rep. Sarbanes. Rep. Cardenas. Rep. Cardenas votes aye. Rep. Blunt Rochester. Rep. Blunt Rochester votes aye. Rep. Pallone. Aye. Rep. Pallone votes aye.
Any members not recorded? Mr. Peters, how's Mr. Peters recorded?
Mr. Peters is not recorded. Rep. Peters votes aye.
How's Mr. Guthrie reported?
Mr. Guthrie is not recorded. Mr. Guthrie votes no.
How's Mr. Johnson recorded?
Mr. Johnson is not recorded. Mr. Johnson votes no.
Any further members not recorded? Clerk will report the total.
Chair Duncan, on that vote, we have 9 ayes and 13 noes.
The noes have it. The amendment's not agreed to. The pending question is adoption of the bill as amended. Recorded vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. She asked for a recorded vote, so the clerk will call the roll.
Rep. Burgess. Rep. Burgess votes aye. Rep. Latta. Rep. Latta votes aye. Rep. Guthrie. Rep. Guthrie votes aye. Rep. Griffith. Rep. Griffith votes aye. Rep. Johnson. Rep. Johnson votes aye. Rep. Bouchon. Rep. Wahlberg. Rep. Wahlberg votes aye. Rep. Palmer. Rep. Palmer votes aye. Rep. Curtis. Rep. Lesko. Rep. Lesko votes aye. Rep. Pence. Rep. Armstrong. Rep. Armstrong votes aye. Rep. Weber. Rep. Weber votes aye. Rep. Balderson. Rep. Balderson votes aye. Rep. Pfluger. Rep. Rogers. Rep. Rogers votes aye. Rep. Duncan. Rep. Duncan votes aye. Rep. DeGette. Rep. DeGette votes no. Rep. Peters. Rep. Fletcher. Rep. Fletcher votes no. Rep. Matsui. No. Rep. Matsui votes no. Rep. Tonko.
No.
Rep. Tonko votes no. Rep. Vesey. Rep. Custer. Rep. Schreier. Rep. Schreier votes no. Rep. Castor. Rep. Sarbanes. Rep. Cardenas. Rep. Cardenas votes no. Rep. Blunt Rochester. Rep. Blunt Rochester votes no. Rep. Pallone. No. Rep. Pallone votes no.
Are there any members not recorded? Clerk will report the total.
Chair Duncan, on that vote, we have 13 ayes and 8 noes.
The ayes have it, and the bill as amended, H.R. 1115, will be sent to the full committee. Chair now calls up H.R. 1160 and asks clerk to report.
H.R. 1160, to direct the Secretary of Energy to promulgate regulations to facilitate the timely submission of notifications regarding cybersecurity incidents and potential cybersecurity incidents with respect to critical electric infrastructure and for other purposes.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. The bill will be open for amendment anytime. So ordered. Are there any bipartisan amendments to the bill? Any other amendments to the bill? Chair will now recognize Mr. Wahlberg to explain his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. H.R. 1160, the Critical Electric Infrastructure Cybersecurity Incident Reporting Act, would amend the Federal Power Act to identify the Department of Energy as a designated agency to receive notifications regarding cybersecurity incidents with respect to critical electric infrastructure. Cyber attacks on energy infrastructure reached record highs in 2022. We're facing a dangerous combination. Nation states and bad actors are getting better at targeting our critical energy assets, while our energy grid is aging and becoming more vulnerable. We only had a glimpse of how damaging an energy sector cyber attack could be when Colonial Pipeline suffered a ransomware attack in 2021. 45% of pipeline operators were affected. More than 17 states declared a state of emergency, and consumers were hit with higher gas prices due to supply shortage. Just this past week, over 900,000 consumers in southern Michigan, after a Wednesday ice storm, lost power. My home as well. 90,000 consumers are still without power as of last night. A widespread attack on our electric grid would even be more devastating. Department of Energy was established by the FAST Act as the right agency when it comes to energy cybersecurity. The legislation would direct the agency to develop regulations that will add more clarity on the scope and scale of cybersecurity incidents that require reporting. It also charges them with establishing procedures for reporting potential cybersecurity incidents. These actions will help companies quickly respond to increasing attacks and install preventative measures. I understand there have been some concerns about potential duplication of reporting requirements, but this is just the first step in the committee process for a bill. Cybersecurity is a national security issue, and most importantly, it has critical assets which require the attention of experts across the federal government to ensure Americans are safe. I want to thank Representative Schreier for joining me in introducing this legislation. I look forward to working with her, my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, and industry to improve the bill before we move to the full committee. I encourage my colleagues to support this legislation so that we can continue the conversation and move it forward in the committee process. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair will now go to the co-sponsor of the bill, Ms. Schreier, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Mr. Wahlberg for working with me on this. And when it comes to our national security, cybersecurity is a major concern, as you just pointed out. Broadly, Department of Homeland Security manages these threats and is the point agency, but our energy systems are different. Power plants, the electric grid are high-risk prime targets, as we have already seen and as Mr. Wahlberg just pointed out. So when it comes to our critical electric infrastructure, we really need the expertise and involvement of the Department of Energy, and they've got to play a key role. We recently had a legislative hearing on this bill. It has bipartisan support. I would just like to flag, along with my colleague, that this is one step in a longer process, and stakeholder feedback is critical. So I am committed, along with Mr. Wahlberg and the other members of this committee, to ensure that we can properly protect the cybersecurity of our power system and ensure that Department of Energy has the appropriate key place at the table because of their expertise when it comes to energy transmission and grid nuance. So again, we're getting more feedback from stakeholders whose input we didn't have at the beginning, and I've heard from many of the utilities in Washington State about their concerns, and I think we can find the right balance and protect our grid. Thank you very much. I yield back. Oh, I yield to Mr.
Will the
Cardenas.
gentlewoman yield? I want to say something nice. No, I'd like to thank Congressman Wahlberg and Congresswoman Schreier, Dr. Schreier, for working together on this. This is a perfect example of what we can do together when we do cooperate, when we do give each other enough time and respect to dialogue and agree and disagree or what have you. I think it's 9 bills that we're hearing today, but here we have a bill that's bipartisan, and hopefully we can get back to more of those days with where we can have. I remember in this committee, early on when I got on this committee, we didn't hear about it in the press, but we had marked up 41 bills that day. 1 bill was withdrawn, and if I think my memory serves me correctly, there was 1 bill where it wasn't bipartisan. The 39 bills were fully 100% bipartisan. A yes vote by every Democrat and every Republican on this committee. So hopefully we can get back to those days, and hopefully we can all, Republicans and Democrats, trumpet bills like this one, and when we do find ourselves working together for the American people and also to improve the world. I just wanted to say thank you, and on a positive note, this is a great bill. Thank you.
Would the gentlelady yield? I just want you to notice for the record how far apart the representative and I are, so all of you in between ought to come together easily on this bill.
Yes, and yet how close we are at the same time. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Any further discussion? Ms. Lesko, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'd move to strike the last word. As was mentioned, specifically the American Public Power Association had written me a letter and with some concerns, and so I look forward to working with the sponsors to see if we can mitigate those concerns. And with that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. No further discussion. We'll now move to vote. We'll say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the ayes have it. So that concludes the markup, 9 bills, and I'm glad we did, Tony, end on a positive note. So thanks for pointing that out.
Mr. Chairman, when would be the time to announce submitting an article for the record?
I
ask unanimous consent to submit for the record an article, Defense Secretary calls climate change an existential threat, dated April 22nd, 2021, an article written by David Vergan, and I forwarded it to the staff already.
Without objection.
Thank you so much.
Without objection, staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes to legislation approved by the subcommittee today. So ordered. Without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned. Thanks, everyone.